Session, the quorum of the board is present. Regular meeting of the State Board of Education is reconvened. Ms. Evans, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's meeting?
Yes, there are people who have registered to provide public comment today, and I will review the rules. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will keep track of time. We will be strictly following the time limit so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people. Any person disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. Public participation will occur in person and virtually. We will begin with the persons that are physically in the room with us today and then move to those in the queue online. First in the room, we have Renee Upham. If you go ahead and have a seat at the table. And whenever you're comfortable and ready, you may begin your public comment.
I'll speak fast, but I'm going to ask for a little bit of grace. On November 30th, 2021 at 12:53 p.m., my son Keegan texted me from high school. The text came in sentences a few seconds apart, and they went like this. Someone has a gun in my school, Mom. We're in lockdown. People in my class said they heard gunshots. It wasn't that far from where I am. I don't have good service. In between his messages are my messages and my husband's. Mine start with questioning and turn to pleading. Keegan, are you okay? Can you leave the building, Keegan? Keegan, please stay in contact. Please write back, please write back, please write back. My name is Renee Upham. My son Keegan was a junior at Oxford High School on November 30th, 2021. I was a teacher in Oxford. I worked at the middle school. I was just down the street. One of the ways I've thought about my role as Keegan's mom is that I am a protector of his childhood as much as I can be. That's how I think of teaching. That's how I think of schools. I've always viewed schools and my role as protector of childhoods. Schools are currently failing in that regard. When 4 kids don't come home from school because they were murdered in the hallways of their building, and schools are allowed to refuse to answer any questions we have about those murders, the system has utterly failed. Read the Guidepost report, all 600 pages of it. You will see that Oxford failed that day and in the days prior to the shooting. But it wasn't only Oxford that behaved egregiously. To be blunt, Oakland County schools in the state of Michigan abandoned Oxford kids. You abandoned Oxford kids. All 1,600 people in the building that day were left to figure out this complicated and terrifying event on their own, without the support of their school district, without the support of their state, without the support of their county. How is it a school district can be found in a formal investigation to be culpable in the deaths of 4 kids, and no one in the Department of Education cares enough to show up and help us fight for accountability? How is that possible? Ask yourselves, what has your outreach been to my son and his classmates? Had you asked, the kids would tell you that the list of failures is long. Oxford is the only school shooting where students return to the same building where they witnessed bloodshed with minimal changes. Imagine what that does to the psyche of children to walk through hallways where their friends died. Trauma-informed counselors were not immediately brought in. Groups of children were interested in counseling, but then gave up because they didn't have the right experts. Families and students at Board of Education meetings were shouted down. After one dreadful meeting, we put a call into Dr. Rice's office. We asked him to please show up for kids. He did not. We asked Wanda at Oakland County Schools to help. After promising to arrange a meeting, she too never showed up.
Thank you. Thank you for your public comment.
I have very little. Can I finish?
Continue, right?
You cannot move forward until you take care of what is left unfinished. You put Oxford High School students, staff, and families in your rearview mirror, and you continue to refuse to see us. You are dishonoring them and the institution that you represent. You cannot tell yourselves that you care about students and continue to ignore a preventable nightmare that was perpetrated on an entire school of them. This morning, we sat in the car so we could watch the trial of the Oxford shooter parents. Those families are sitting in that courtroom right now, while this morning you are arguing, being personal with each other, voting down resolutions that would help us. Shame on you.
Next person for public comment is Danielle Krojek. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Oxford High School, November 30th, 2021. On this day, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, and Justin Schilling were murdered. Phoebe Arthur, John Asciutto, Riley Franz, Elijah Mueller, Kylie Osage, Aiden Watson, Molly Darnell, shot. Keegan Gregory, held at gunpoint, witnessed the execution of Justin. In total, over 1,600 students and staff terrorized, traumatized, including my daughter, Madeline, who was 14 years old at the time. My name is Danielle Krozak, and I am one of the many outspoken parents focused on advocacy, accountability in the name of my child, all the victims' families, students, and staff across Oxford High School and the state of Michigan. We have been to board meetings, we have met with experts, we have researched policies, we understand threat assessment, Secret Service guides, we've spoken to state and federal agencies with little to no response. My daughter is a junior now. It's been 2.5 years. She has good days and bad. She still texts Hannah, has nightmares, goes to therapy weekly. She struggles with attendance, focus. She is one of 1,600 stories, untold stories. In 1998, I moved from Michigan to Denver. I was 24 years old, single, 2 years out of college, not a care in the world, having lunch less than a mile from Columbine High School. I can still hear the sirens of the first responders racing past me to get to the high school. As a community member, I was in shock, probably like many of you. I was angry, I was grieving for children and parents I didn't know. I experienced this trauma, but really, I had no idea. I really didn't understand it. I participated in fundraisers. I offered thoughts and prayers. I made donations. I bought the t-shirt. I bought the Columbine Strong t-shirt. I thought it was enough at the time. 25 years later, here I am. On November 11th, I received a concerning text from my daughter expressing her fear of a shooting to be at the high school at 12:50 the following Friday. I immediately contacted the school. I spoke to the principal secretary. I asked for a call to action. My gut told me something is wrong. Parents and students had been expressing concern of safety for weeks. We were ignored. We were told, trust me, your kids are safe. To which I responded, and I quote, I am certain the parents of Sandy Hook and Columbine also thought their kids were safe that day. These words haunt me. In the meantime, our children were told to stop spreading rumors. They were told, you are safe.
Thank you for your public comment.
If I could just, please. 19 days later, the tragedy occurred. They were not safe. It is unimaginable and unimaginable. You cannot, nothing will prepare you for this. We send our schools with clear backpacks and place false trust that the school will keep them safe. Governmental immunity tells us otherwise. The district failed to implement state and federal guidelines, including the EOP, ahead of the shooting. They had a duty to keep our children safe and failed. The state of Michigan Department of Education has a duty to our children across the state. Who is willing to step up? We need a full state-driven investigation in the Oxford shooting so that we can learn. I, as a parent, should not have to pay $700 for a FOIA to get the police report. We need legislation
done.
requiring independent investigations. We need statewide threat assessment policies, procedures, and the funding to support it. We need a third-party recovery specialist sent to Oxford to help us course correct the damage that has been done.
Thank you.
And we
Ma'am.
need to reform governmental immunity now. The Claire Davis Act passed 2 years after the Arapahoe shooting. 2 years. It reformed governmental immunity in Colorado.
Thank you,
We are
ma'am.
2.5 years past Oxford, and you are asking for more time for research. It's been 25 years. You have your research. We need action now. Thank you.
Next up is Andrea Jones.
I wanted to talk about governmental immunity today, and that was my intent. And then I watched what took place in this room before we got here. Well, we, as Oxford parents, sat in the car trying to flip back and forth between what was happening in this room and watching our close friends stand and give not their first, but their second victim impact statements on live television. We've watched them watch their children be murdered for the first time in a courtroom on video. We've had a lot of firsts with these families. But as I sat there and we watched what took place in this room, I got very angry. I wanted to come here and be proactive and be proactive. That's not what I see happening in this room. That is not at all what I see happening in this room. Is this the best the state of Michigan has to offer our children? You should all be ashamed of yourselves. Everyone in this room should be embarrassed by what happened in this room earlier. I've never met Nikki Snyder. In fact, the little bit that I know about her, I don't disagree with all of her beliefs or her policies or what have you. But she's right about this. We know. We know. Listen to us. You don't know. You think you do, but you don't. Whatever beef you guys have outside of this room, that's fine and all and well. But you're elected officials here to do a job and to protect our kids. And that's not what you're doing. You're failing. You're failing. You meet once a month to come in here and make policy and do things to make things better for our kids. And that's what took place in this room regarding this. What on this sheet doesn't make sense to you? I'd love to know. What more do you need to research? I mean, in the event of serious injury or death, a mandatory investigation occurs. What is there to question there? What if it was your kid? What's to question on that? What more research do you need? And this isn't just about guns. We heard that with the table. This is about gross negligence, period, in public schools. This isn't just about guns. People want to make it about guns, but it's not. In public schools, there is no accountability. What is the incentive? What is the incentive when you can't be held accountable? If it was your kid, how would you feel? This isn't just about guns. Stop making it political. Be the adults in the room. You guys are supposed to be the pillars that our kids look up to, that parents look up to, and set policy. And this is how we behave. And you wonder why we're frustrated. You wonder why we're frustrated as Oxford parents and why you keep seeing us and why we're angry and why we show up at places like this.
Thank you for your
why.
public comment today. Thank you.
You should all be ashamed.
Next up in the room is Bob Picard.
Can I pass out some information real quick?
I'm sorry?
I'd like to pass out some information real quick.
We can help with that too. Whenever you're ready, you may begin your public comment.
I'm Bob Pickard from Byron Center. Thank you, Superintendent Rice and board members, for letting me speak today. I'm here on behalf of the students and the teachers of our school system. I'll start with what happened in Perry, Iowa. I went to college in Iowa. My roommate was from Perry, so I have been there. Nice farming community where everyone knows your name. I never thought a school shooting would happen in Perry, but it did. Please don't think it won't happen to us. We need to be proactive in making our precious children and teachers top priority. I was a Wyoming public school custodian for 22 blessed years. When all these school shootings started, I asked God, what can I do to help protect my students and teachers? I could not look in the face of a second grader and tell him, I'm not going to protect you if a shooter comes in. God reminded me when I was in college, I set a record for hitting batters more than I did getting out. This was the only defense that I had for protecting, and I know we need to do a whole lot better than this. I work at Costco gas station. A veteran came in and said, why don't we get veterans in our school system? I said, that's a great idea. The next day, Chris Jansen comes in. He has a veteran-owned company. He's on the sheet I just passed out. I said, Chris, would you be willing to get your veterans in our schools to protect our children and our teachers? He said, absolutely. If they come into our school system, he will not bring any veterans in with PTSD, only veterans that have served in the States. We need to do something to protect our children and teachers. They depend on us and you guys when they go into the school. Nothing's going to happen to them. My own personal proposal is to put metal detectors in our schools, armed guards, and most important, to put God back into our schools. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you have any questions, I'm on here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the queue online.
State.
Hello, caller, can you hear me?
To protect our children and teachers.
Yes.
Can I ask for you to mute YouTube in the back, please?
Second.
Personal
This is my first time here. Oh. Mute. Got it.
Very good. Whenever you're ready, if you could please tell us your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes of public comment.
Right now?
Yes.
Oh, my name is Brian Peck, and I am calling from Detroit. I'm a high school teacher at University Prep Academy High School. I'm in my 11th year teaching Spanish, but I just recently became a librarian through Wayne State's program, and I'm here to call about libraries, school libraries. It's School Library Month, and Michigan is 46th in the nation with school libraries. 73% of our students do not have access to an effective library with a certified librarian, and I'm wondering how school libraries will fit into the top 10 strategic plan. And I just wanted to share a little bit about why I started a library here. The 3 schools that I've worked in the city, all Title I schools, none of them had libraries or librarians. And obviously that has an impact on student literacy. Students can't just be getting their reading during instruction time. They need to build that stamina, that background knowledge, vocabulary on their own, exploring things that they're interested in. And so a librarian is the person who puts the right book in the right hands of the student. Let me say that schools have a lot of books. You'll find in a lot of schools that in rooms, random rooms, in closets, a lot of books are in boxes, not in the hands of students. And so librarians are stewards. They take the money that you're investing in our schools and they collaborate with teachers to get the right book in the right hands. My principal here has been really gracious in allowing me to have one of my 5 hours as a librarian. And I've been able to have 15 students in a project-based learning class, and we've started a library. And 30% of our students have voluntarily come in and they're reading. And so I'm hoping that by next year, I'll be able to come on here with some data about their improvement. A shout out to my friend Patrick Taylor at East Point Schools. He's the librarian there for that district. Students who have read 5 books or more, he has found have had a 7-point increase on average in their RIT score. So I'm hoping that we have some of that here, because only 17% of our students, and our school is a very reputable school in the city, only 17% are reaching their ELA proficiency. So I really think libraries are an important part of that. The Senator Camilleri and Senator Bayer have 3 bills that they've put in to have a library in every school. I know it sounds very old school to have libraries, but we're in a golden age of young adult literature, and I'm seeing my students really blossom as they find books that they like, and I just think it's essential. So I'm hoping that today you can bring that into your conversation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Mike, are there any other persons who have pre-registered for public comment today?
Those are all the callers today.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you, Board. Thank you for those of you who provided public comment today. We're 1:53 p.m. Board. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting of March 12, 2024. Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Do I have a second? Thank you very much, Mr. Bullock. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder absent, and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
May I please have a motion to approve the confirmation of the closed session of March 12th, 2024?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bullock, seconded by Dr. Pritchett. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder absent, and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I please also have a motion to approve the minutes of the Legislative Committee meeting of April 2nd, 2024? It's moved by Dr. Robinson. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Tilly. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a
Yeah.
roll call vote.
Wait.
Yes, please.
So there's no hot link to the,
It's been updated.
oh, it has?
Mhm.
Oh, I just went to it online. But anyway, you're saying it's going to be, or, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh? Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder absent, and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda today is a presentation on school safety. During this presentation, we will hear about recent laws, funding, trainings, current initiatives, and next steps. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Diane Golzinski, Deputy Superintendent, Division of Finance and Operations, Ms. Amy Alanis, Director of the Office of Health and Safety, Dr. Wanda Cook-Robinson, Superintendent of Oakland Schools, and Ms. Kim Root, Section Manager, the Office of School Safety, Michigan State Police. This is an information presentation. No board action is required. Presenters, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. It's great to be with you. And as Dr. Rice said, I am here with incredible, critical partners who help us every single day on this important topic of school safety. Board, we have had the opportunity to present to you our vision on a comprehensive school mental health system. Today, we are pleased to share a companion vision of what a comprehensive school safety system looks like. A comprehensive school safety system involves not only physical safety, but emotional safety and relational trust. Both emotional safety and relational trust tie into MDE's Student Advisory Council's work on how to create safe spaces in schools. As you heard from this incredible group of young leaders in December, safe spaces in schools are important for mental and social support, allowing students to find others that can be allies and have common interests. It builds a sense of belonging and community and increases academic and social success. It's important to note that school safety is a complex issue and is not strictly about the physical safety aspects of a school building. And while school safety and student mental health may be intertwined, As a rule, the average person with mental health challenges is not a threat to others. After the tragedies of Oxford and Michigan State University, firearm laws were enacted related to universal background checks, red flag laws, safe storage of firearms, and the sale and use of tax exemption for firearm safety devices. Board, you also passed 2 resolutions on safer school environments, first in October 2022 and again in March 2023. Both of the resolutions were passed on a statewide poll conducted by EPIC MRA that found there was substantial agreement among Michiganders on common sense gun safety initiatives and served as a prelude to the legislative debates over laws that I just spoke about. As you know, we have come a long way in terms of funding for school mental health, going from nothing in fiscal year 2018 to over $112 million in recurring funding in 2024, plus $343 million in non-recurring funding. $328 million of that can be used for both school safety and mental health. In terms of school safety funding in that same time period, school safety was funded at the level of $10 million in 2018 to $337 million in fiscal year 24, with that same $328 million, which can be used for both school safety and mental health.
So there are currently 2 commissions operating that address school safety. There is the School Safety Commission that began in March of 2019, led by the Michigan State Police. The commission's purpose is to provide recommendations to MSP's Office of School Safety, including model practices for determining school safety measures, and also to carry out final recommendations from the School Safety Task Force. The other commission is the School Safety and Mental Health Commission that was created in 2023 and led by Wayne Risa. The purpose of this commission is to provide recommendations to reduce youth suicides and strengthen the mental health of school-age children, adolescents, and their families through a comprehensive statewide approach. The Prevent to Protect project is a $15 million 5-year project that will continue until September of 2027. It is led by Michigan State University, and the goal is to support high-risk adolescents and their families by connecting them to the project's intensive support teams. These support teams provide specialized violence prevention expertise to facilitate management of high-risk, high-need adolescents, clinical consultation, and mentoring. The teams are staffed by a case manager and mentor to support schools, community mental health agencies, law enforcement, courts, and other community stakeholders in the prevention of violence and the facilitation of rehabilitation. The teams also conduct ongoing risk and needs assessment and coordinate individual care plans. We also in Michigan have the OK to Say program. OK to Say is a student safety program for confidentially reporting on tips and potential harm to themselves or others, or criminal activities directed at students, school employees, and schools. Technicians receive the tips and address the immediate need by forwarding to schools, local law enforcement, mental health agencies, or the Department of Health and Human Services. The students have the ability to report the tips from either calling, texting, or emailing, and there is an app that students can put on their phone. OK to Say staff also travel to schools to present on the system. There's also House Bill 5549 that has been introduced, which would require schools to have a behavioral threat assessment and management team that includes, at a minimum, an administrator, mental health professional, and a school resource officer or other law enforcement official. The team would be responsible for defining concerning behavior and educating the school community, monitoring, assessing, and performing inquiries into concerning behavior, distinguishing between credible and non-credible threats, developing and educating on a central reporting mechanism, outlining the relationship between school personnel and law enforcement, and also developing a plan to assist a student engaging in concerning behavior. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Kim Root with the Michigan State Police Office of School Safety to discuss the School Safety Academy.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to present to you today. My role in the Michigan State Police is housed within the Grants and Community Services Division of the Michigan State Police. I've been pleased to hold that position as manager since May of 2022. Prior to that time, I served as an administrator in Huron Valley Schools in Oakland County, where school safety was one of my responsibilities. So props to the Michigan State Police for hiring someone who'd actually had time in schools. And so part of my role is bridging law enforcement and the education community. One of our many projects is the School Safety Academy, which you'll hear about today. We are hosting 6 two-day sessions around the state. The first one occurred in March in Grand Rapids. We had over 160 school personnel, law enforcement, mental health professionals attend that two-day session. The second one is going on right now in Livonia, and we had 160 registrants who are attending today and tomorrow. Are going to hear from national caliber speakers on a range of topics, including childhood and adolescent brain development, trauma-informed emergency operations plans, behavioral threat assessment, sextortion, just a range of topics that we thought were appropriate for anyone serving in a school safety role or superintendents and others who are working to make our K-12 schools safer. You'll see the other, I'm sorry, could we go back? You'll see that the other locations are also listed there. We have 3 learning objectives intended to really deepen knowledge and understanding around the topics of school safety, and then allow our learners to go back and apply those topics in their own districts to develop a comprehensive school safety plan. We had, as I mentioned, school resource officers, as well as superintendents, and those involved with school safety in their schools who are attending. Next slide, please. This project is funded through a fiscal year 2023 appropriation to the School Safety and Mental Health Commission, and then provided to the Grants and Community Services Division Office of School Safety. Our sessions, their two-day sessions, are offered at no cost to attendees. So the only costs that they incur are their own travel costs associated. We give them great resources, and then we also have sketch credits and MCOLS credits available for them as they attend these sessions. I mentioned, next slide, thank you. I mentioned the comprehensive school safety framework. We've been very fortunate to partner with Safe and Sound Schools, which is a national organization really leading the way in the area of school safety. They're a nonprofit organization. One of their co-founders, Ms. Michelle Gay, is one of our speakers at the Academy. She lost her child during the Sandy Hook tragedy, and now has been working, diligently as an advocate for school safety. All of our topics in the School Safety Academy fit into one of the buckets that you can see: mental and behavioral health, health and wellness, physical safety and security, culture, climate and community, leadership, law and policy, and then operations and emergency management. And our goal really is to have learners take away something that they can do in their schools that fit into each one of these buckets. Because what we know is that school safety isn't one thing we do or two things we do or three. It's a layered approach, and tackling the layers of school safety is a significant commitment. And so we're hoping to give them some of the tools that they can take with them and apply them in their own districts. Next slide, please. We had each session capped at 150 learners. We actually gave ourselves a little bit of wiggle room based on the venues and have had 160 at each. Each will have a daily evaluation opportunity so that we can learn and grow from the programs that we're offering within the school safety. They have the same content and format for each session. So if you attend in Livonia, you're going to get the same thing that if you attend in Escanaba. Our presenters, bless them, they have been able to travel to the UP with us, and so we know that it's important to offer the same level of learning in the UP as it is in Southeast Michigan, so we were very committed to that. During each session, attendees get a trauma kit books associated with the authors that we have presenting, and the flash drive with all their presentation materials on that flash drive. So they take a number of resources with them when they leave. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit about our day one sessions. I did mention some of them, but you can see that there's a broad range of sessions here. And then next slide, please. And then the following sessions. We ask that each attendee commit for the full 2 days so that they get the full breadth of what we offer to them. As Amy mentioned, we have one session also dedicated to best practices in school safety, including OK to Say, which is housed within the Office of School Safety within the Michigan State Police. Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
And then just some takeaways, deep understanding of their school community's safety needs, tools to create school communities where students feel safe, develop an understanding of key principles of school safety, and then finally generate actionable items to improve school safety and security in their own communities. That's critical, taking away things that they can actually do because they'll be in session tomorrow on Thursday when they get back to their schools.
Okay, thank you. So emergency operation plans are also critical in school safety, and MSP has developed emergency operation plan guidance with customizable templates that can be used by the districts in creating their own EOPs. Districts are required to have one on file and that has been approved by their local school board, and the plans must be reviewed at least every other year with law enforcement. Also moving forward, we will continue to partner with MSP's Office of School Safety to develop a comprehensive school safety system framework for school districts, so that layered approach that Ms. Root was referring to. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Wanda Cook-Robinson for some thoughts and reflections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And good afternoon. You know, school safety has always been a priority for us in the schools. We perform annual drills, we add locks to our buildings, and we provide a variety of training to staff to be able to deal with events in the immediate and after a tragic event. I agree with my parents who are here from Oakland County today that on November 30th, 2021, it changed not only the Oxford community, but it changed every community and school district in Oakland County and Public Service Academy. And it made us have to look at ourselves. We thought we were prepared. We thought we had done the training. We thought we had brought in all the resources. But until that event happens and you are in the seat and you have to act, that is when you realize where the gaps are. And that happened to us in Oakland County. Most importantly, we have to remember that it's not only about physical safety, but it's about psychological safety as well. And we have to consider both as we move forward. In Oakland, when that tragedy happened, we pulled our staff together and said, how can we help? And I'll talk in a minute about the lessons that we learned and what we know we can do better. We quickly realized that as an ISD, we were not as prepared as we thought we were. We found ourselves in a position to provide support while we were still learning. It's kind of like fixing the Apollo space mission. When it's in motion and it's broken, it needs help. And we had to do both simultaneously. But we knew we had to work to make a priority planning and prevention, intervention and mitigation, and crisis response and recovery. These are the three areas that we knew we were going to have to focus on. We were going to have to provide additional training across the county. And not only teachers, but everyone in the environment. One of the things that we did in Oakland County was to pull together a summit with my partner, Sheriff Bouchard, and for every school district, and some of my school districts, as they are across the state, have multiple municipalities. We pulled together the police chief, the person who was in charge of Homeland Security. We got the police, we got the fire, we got everyone together to talk about how are we going to make this system better? How are we going to increase response time to our schools? How are we going to make sure the emergency plans for each school district is known by all the members of the team? And school safety is everyone's job, not just those that do law enforcement, not just the teachers that are in the classroom, but everyone in the community. It is their issue, and they have to be a part of how we respond and how we prepare. When we talk about lessons learned, we learned that it's not if a crisis is going to occur, it's when. And when it occurs, are you ready, and is everyone in your village ready to respond with you? To varying degrees, we know that everyone has that role, and we've emphasized that across Oakland County as we provided that training. One of the things that we knew that we had to do was to decrease the vulnerability in our school districts. And to do that, we had to plan. We brought teams in from all over the county with the lessons that we had learned. We brought in experts, and we said, this is the plan. How do we start evolving? And it wasn't a plan that was stagnant. It has to be a plan that's evolving. So the plan continues, and we keep learning and keep improving and keep training. We knew that we need strong systems to address planning and prevention and intervention. And we know that there is no perfect response. And one size does not fit all. The response that we would do in Oxford is not the same as the response we would do if we were in Troy. And not the elements and the critical components would be the same, but how the district and the community is configured and the resources requires an individualized response. And so we had to learn that, and we had to learn how could we flex, and how could we train to be able to flex within those perimeters. We learned that both physical and psychological safety had to be the utmost importance for us. And we also learned that although one size doesn't fit all, that there are some specific trainings that everyone needs. And we need to make sure that districts that sit side by side can call on each other when they need help. Another important thing that we learned is that when there's a crisis, help comes from everywhere. Lots of help. But it isn't always the help that's needed at that particular time. It is important about the quality of the help and sequencing. For example, one of the things that we found out very quickly that we needed in Oxford was trauma-trained, informed psychologists and social workers. So when all of that help came and individuals that didn't have that help, we asked them to wait. And you can imagine how that was received. So one of the things that we learned is how we communicate what the needs are and how we put together a plan to utilize all the help that comes. Because it's all going to be needed. It's a matter of sequencing. Recovery is a big issue. It's not only the event, it's what you do after and how you plan and the immediate after and how we prepare our staff and students to do that. We do that with a series of trainings that we do. We use the PREPARE training. I know many of you are familiar with PREPARE, and we've trained. We have 7 PREPARE trained individuals on the staff at Oakland, and we are trying to build that capacity across Oakland County. We also use the positive behavioral intervention supports. That's another tool that we use. We also work very closely with FEMA and with the state police and our county police, and we train with them. We have resource officers across the county, and we train them together, and we bring them together so that they're communicating. The other thing that we are doing in Oakland, Sheriff Bouchard was able to get a grant to do an emergency channel. We call it PA 25. He immediately called us as a partner and said the schools have to be a part of this channel. And we are now going to have every school district in Oakland County a part of that response channel. So when something happens, the closest municipality to us will be able to hear what is happening and be able to help us. And we continue to look for ways that we can work together. We offer comprehensive school suicide prevention and youth mental health first aid, and we work closely with our community health network. We found that we're going to have to stay close to our partners and keep evolving in the training that we provide and the services that we offer. Now, as you can see, I'm a teacher. I could go on and on. I'm going to stop right there. I'll stop there. But see me after.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, presenters. Board members, questions or comments? Mr. McMillan.
I guess the main question I have is, what about accountability? We heard parents just a little while ago talk about nobody was held accountable. In Oxford, who's going to jail for not following the law? Who's being, where is their accountability? So what, these are all fine, we're gonna do this, we're gonna spend money with this, we're gonna implement these rules, these laws, but if they're not followed, who's held accountable? I mean, what about advocating for things like what the parents are talking about, what was in this resolution? I mean, removing governmental immunity and making sure that people are held accountable. Because all this is all fine and dandy, but it really, I think it lacks any kind of teeth. And, we're going to keep learning after the fact until there's incentives. I mean, everything is based on incentives. If there's no incentive, nobody gets, there's no consequences, no significant consequences for not following the law, then it just, why do they have to follow it? So I'm just wondering, I mean, are any of these, any of the things that are going to be done here, does it include removing immunity, making sure there's accountability, making sure, I don't know, third-party investigations? I mean, it's very troubling about this talk about the insurance companies kind of got involved and kind of blocked out and withheld, a lot of FOIA information was withheld. And, I can imagine they're saying, well, if this gets out, and given to the parents, we're going to have to pay millions more. I mean, is that the kind of stuff that, the kind of decision-making that should be going on? Or can we say, okay, what do we need to do to make sure parents, have everything that they need, that they deserve, full transparency? And then when we're talking about therapists and therapy, we heard from parents saying that, there was just no, there was talk of it, nothing ever happened. I mean, how about just giving out vouchers everywhere and you guys go find your therapist? I mean, if you guys want to, you know what's best. The parents knows what's best for the kids that are still around. How about we just give out vouchers and get them the help quickly instead of waiting on a list and hoping government will do something that it very rarely does. So I just, but I mean, my main thing I think that I heard of was accountability, and I guess how do we ensure there's going to be accountability in all this? I mean, these are all fine and dandy, but when tragedy occurs, I mean, but to try to prevent it, you really need people to be held accountable so they know that they have to follow the law and they have to do what's best. So where are those proposals? That's what I'm asking. Are there any?
Talk about accountability associated with, for example, the violation of red flag laws or the violation of universal background check laws.
No, I'm talking
or the violation of safe storage laws.
No, I'm talking about EOP and all the other, yeah, that's the problem is you get political and you get into all that Democrat and Republican and all that, but the fact is that those things don't really help. It's holding people accountable, removing governmental immunity, and getting people held accountable. That's what's going to help. All this political jargon
We're kind of bouncing around a little bit. Well, I mean, you're the one who raised the politics. I didn't. I'm not raising politics.
I'm asking questions about policy.
I raised 4 gun safety laws that were passed, 3 of which have substantial criminal teeth associated with them.
So you don't want any removal of governmental immunity because it's the adults in the system that are more important than the kids to you.
I don't know, does anybody have anything to share? If not, then that's fine. You came to do a presentation about what you presented on, but if you have something to share about governmental immunity, that's fine. Otherwise, you may want to share about emergency operation plans.
They wouldn't dare because they'd lose their jobs because that's what protects the adults in the system and not the kids. They
Okay.
wouldn't dare say anything that you don't want them to say.
So, emergency operation plans, is that anything that you care to share on? Ms.
So,
Root.
As Ms. Alanis mentioned, districts are required every 2 years to update their emergency operations plans. There's a way to verify that in the MEG system. And, you know, there are some states that have penalties associated with not doing that. Michigan is not currently one of them. None of us at this table are in a position to necessarily make that happen. That would be a legislative change that would occur. What we do at the Michigan State Police is provide a template and recommendations for what gets included in an emergency operation plan, and then advise school districts to, you know, what sections are appropriate for their particular district. Not all would necessarily apply, and then encourage them to have those updated even more readily than what the law requires at this point, or what the statute requires at this point. Any district that I talk to, I encourage them to do an annual review of their emergency operation plan and then verify in the system every 2 years.
And as they're creating those plans, every district and every school has an emergency manager that oversees them, and so they work directly with the emergency managers in the creation of that. So law enforcement is involved.
Our role as an intermediate school district is to provide consultation and support, and we do that in the area of the emergency plans. Working closely with our partners, we will go and help districts to develop their emergency plans. We help them to set up schedules to review them. I agree that is very, very important, and we do that on a continuous basis.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Tilley.
What law was broken? I know that a shooter went in. I know that there were signs, I think, that there were mental health issues. But I want to be clear on what law other people, besides the shooter and the parents, broke. Because I'm not clear on that. Oxford?
Mm-hmm. None come to mind about breaking the law per se, but what I'm understanding is that there was an issue about how their practice was implemented or not implemented, that was the issue.
Okay, because I'm not hearing practice, I'm hearing law.
I agree with you, and
So,
I can't think of what law the staff.
I just want to understand.
But it's not my area. It's not my area, I'll say that, but I cannot think of a law that was broken.
Let me say this, because I am very full, so I need to say a few things. For one, my heart goes out to all of the parents, all of the victims, everybody that went through that situation. That is a parent's worst nightmare. That is children experiencing that is absolutely horrific. I grew up in Detroit, where shootings, unfortunately, were commonplace growing up. I grew up, and I'm a survivor. I lost my brother. I saw the aftermath when I went into the house of them not finishing cleaning up. And so I saw the aftermath of my brother. I lost my cousin. I lost so many friends. This shootings are not, it's not an isolated incident. And especially where some of us grew up. And in the schools, I attended high school in a time where they transitioned to, you know, having police officers in schools. And
the metal detectors in schools, and there were students who were taking off the doors so that they could sneak guns in, and shooting still took place in the schools. This is something that has happened in our community for a very long time. It's something I've been vocal about, but a lot of people have ignored. It's something this is the first gun safety and gun violence is the first social justice issue I actually spoke out and organized around. So this is something that is definitely very important to me. And I appreciate that we're having this, especially today with all of the conversation going on, this presentation. I know I got a call from the governor's office about Oxford, about a parent with the aftermath, what they're dealing with their children, and I reached out to Dr. Rice. I know that Dr. Rice went on the scene during that. So this is not a situation where we don't care or we haven't been trying to do what we can do from our level. And if there's something else that can be done, I'm open to conversations and would love conversations. We haven't even had those conversations. This morning was the first day we heard about this resolution, and there are things that we don't know about it. I think all of us want to support how we can and are willing to have conversations so that we can make sure that this isn't policy. The resolutions are not policy. The resolutions are us coming together in our voice, voting for it, and saying to the legislature, hey, we would like to see laws passed around this. We want to make sure that it's not only the parents' voice, we're putting our votes on this, that we understand everything that we're voting on. And we just need time to do that. So nobody is saying, no, we're not going to do anything or we don't want to do anything. It has not been years that we've had this resolution. So this.
Excuse me, we are not going to go back and forth with the audience.
Came out in October, the law is broken on EOP. Read the report. Our names and numbers are here. We are happy to sit down and have a conversation.
Thank you.
Read the guidepost report.
So, and we are not the local board either. So,
Tiffany, those are the laws that were broken, the EOP laws. There was negligence involved. Nobody's being held accountable for these things. That's what they're talking about.
You keep saying that, but there's no documentation.
There's plenty of it.
So we are learning, though. We are in a learning stage. We are just being presented with this at the board table. And definitely want to learn more. So the thing is, how do we move forward? How do we move forward as a board? How do we have more of these conversations? How do we know more about the safety plans that are being implemented? And what all schools should do, not just the Oakland County schools, all schools in our state, what should we be doing going forward? Because times have changed, the world has changed, and we need to continue to evolve with it. So I think a lot of this is something that is ongoing.
Very much so, and I think that was to Dr. Cook-Robinson's point, that there was the feeling among many that we were ready for most anything. That clearly was not the case. I think there have been a lot of communities that have felt similarly, a lot of states that have felt similarly. Much has changed in the last 2.5 years. We have not arrived at precisely where we need to be in 2.5 years, but there's a lot more funding for school safety. There's a lot more funding for school mental health. There's a lot more funding associated with identifying children who have challenges and wrapping our arms around those young people and their families, because a lot of this begins in their families. and in fact is enabled in some ways.
And I feel the parents' anger and frustration. That's a lot of trauma. And I wish I had a magical answer or eraser to make it all go away, and I don't. But I do want to say that there needs to be a plan of how can maybe the department, maybe the local superintendent, how can you better support the parents and get some of these questions answered? We're not law enforcement, so we can't handle this, but how can we work with law enforcement to get some of these questions answered? And
Well, I think that work is ongoing. Dr. Cook Robinson?
Yes, and you're exactly right. And, the trauma is not only the students, but staff and parents as well. And one of the things we were able to do in local county, is you can replicate it, we received a $500,000 grant from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund for parents. And we are partnering with the Cook Center out of Utah. And we are piloting this in 7 districts in our county to see how that will work, providing support to parents and families. Because also, I just want to share before I go today that a lot of our students are in need for therapy and support, and there is not enough resources. So even in my most resource districts in Oakland County, they cannot find the professionals. Students are being put on wait lists. So we're trying to bring in other resources like Care Solace, which is an online therapeutic tool, and others to provide support for students and families. But I agree with you. And that's a point that I hope gets in the minutes today.
Well,
and maybe even, have a meeting with the parents so they can say what they need and make sure. And I don't know, you may have done that, but, and that may need to happen again, because obviously they're not feeling that their needs are being met and that they're being heard. So how can we make sure we're continuing that as well, those community conversations?
I agree with you, but I want to talk about the ISD and our role. If I could be queen for a day, if Superintendent Rice would make me queen for a day, there are a lot of things that I would do. However, I'm the ISD superintendent, but the local district and that superintendent, the authority lies with them. I work with them, I encourage them, I try to lead them, I put carrots in front of them to bring them my way. I do a lot of those things. But at the end of the day, it is up to the local board and the local superintendent. In our county, they have started those conversations. I understand in Oxford, the conversations have not went the way they have always wanted them to go or been as fruitful or as meaningful. And I think, at least I hope that has improved since my mentor, Dr. Vicki Markovich, has been there, because she is very parent-centered. So, it's only so much that we can do from here, from the ISD seat by ourselves. But I am very open, as we collaborate with our partners and others, to make that community forum expand.
Well, and I think, too, we need to acknowledge that well-intentioned people are going to disagree on the best things moving forward to keep students and staff and community safe. Everybody's not going to agree on the same ideas. I know extremely well-intentioned people who believe that the issue is not fewer guns, the issue is more guns. That if you want to make our schools safer, you will put guns in the schools, not make sure that there are fewer guns in community. Those are well-intentioned people. I don't agree with them, but they are well-intentioned people, and I acknowledge their argument in a community debate about what best keeps us safe. I mean, I've got local superintendents, you well know. I mean, we've worked side by side for many years that believe strongly that the issue is not fewer weapons, but more weapons. There are people that argue it's all about mental health. There are some that argue that it is only a portion about mental health. And there are some that argue that there should be no mental health services whatsoever in local public school districts. If those are the province somehow of parents and grandparents, guardians, community members, that should not be ours. So to be clear, we're not necessarily going to arrive fully at a meeting of the minds on all measures moving forward. We certainly have to work it, and I think a lot has been done in the last 2.5 years, but I think a lot has to be done to continue. One last, and then we're going to go to Dr. Pugh.
One of the things that I did with the organization I had started was act as a liaison for parents and the police, because a lot of times, murders weren't solved. They had questions they weren't getting answered from the police, or they didn't feel like they were getting the clarity that they needed. Is there someone that is perhaps acting as a liaison, or if there is not, can that happen? Can we somehow get a liaison for the parents, between the parents and the police, so that they can help with getting their questions answered as well?
I think that is happening in many of my communities where I serve. There is a
But
police
specifically
liaison.
in Oxford.
Specifically in Oxford, I don't know.
Okay. That may be something to think about as well.
I think that there have been many conversations, and I believe those conversations will continue. I think those, there have been 2.5 years of, and my belief is those conversations will continue for quite some time.
There are, I'm sure, conversations happening, but they still, it's 2.5 years later, and they still have questions. So, and I don't know all of the ins and outs, and maybe we need to find more. Maybe we need to have more information, but update specifically on Oxford.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Pugh?
I just really wanted to simply thank you all for coming and giving us this update, and at this time that we're trying to figure out what else it is that we can do for Board Member McMillan to be able to ask of you, the people that are all in, the questions that we're having right here. As Board Member Tilley has said, these are conversations, and Dr. Rice, you pointed this out, that have been constantly going. As I was sitting there, I was thinking about working with the Saginaw ISD, and we had this, we had funding from SAMHSA that was around, it was Project Launch, and it was looking at what can we do to go into communities who have had prolonged trauma and stress. And then there was in Flint, the recast, resiliency in communities after stress and trauma. And thinking about that it is ever evolving. This is an issue that is important to all of us, and we all come at it from a different space. And to Dr. Rice's point, we may all have different solutions to solve a common problem, and the problem is broad. And so thank you for bringing us this information to add to what we will need to think about what are our next steps, because we've taken steps. There were steps that were taken before my tenure here. There have been steps since I've been here, since the unfortunate tragedies with MSU and with Oxford. And we will continue on to see what we need. And we thank you for the information that you brought forward today and the hands-on experience around what is working and what may not be working.
Well, and I think I don't know that can be added to, except to say that we're not going to resolve this in any time, in any short period of time. There's some of this is a look back, some of it is a look forward, some of it is about preventing in the future, and some of it is about excavating what happened in the past in part to inform the future. These are enormously complicated issues. And there are a number of people in Oxford who would very much like to have had the opportunity to do differently that day. What that tells us about policy moving forward is a separate question. And we have to reflect upon that. The state police has to reflect upon that. Local law enforcement has to reflect upon it. Local administrators have to reflect upon it. We in the department have to reflect upon it. ISDs have a critical role, but they are not the local school districts. The same is true with MDE and the state board. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We are sitting 243 board, and we're going to pivot at this point to our next presentation. For the next item on today's agenda is a presentation on Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan, Goal 4, the expansion of secondary learning opportunities. This is a presentation that had originally been scheduled for this morning. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent, Division of P20 System and Student Transitions, Dr. Delsa Chapman, Deputy Superintendent, Division of Educator, Student and School Supports, Dr. Brian Piles, Director of the Office of Career and Technical Education, Dr. Corinne Edwards, Director of the Office of Educational Supports, and Ms. Terry Rink, the Director of the Office of Special Education. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Board members, you may, however, be tested at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and good afternoon, board. Today we are coming before you to provide an update on the efforts and metrics specific to Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan, Goal 4, expand secondary learning opportunities for all students. Last month, we shared data and highlights specific to Goal 5, increase the percentage of students who graduate from high school. The 6 sets of success measures here on the screen create the opportunity to meet Goal 4 by expanding secondary learning opportunities that provide rigor and a foundation for reflective insight on post-graduation plans for a viable future. With our focus today, however, being Goal 4, we will share efforts that correlate directly to Goal 5 and Goal 6 as well. Dr. Powles will lead us in sharing data and associated efforts for CTE or Career and Technical Education programs. Dr. Powles?
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, and thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Education, our State Board. I would first like to thank you and any other former State Board members who may be watching this State Board meeting for all of your support over the years. This is my last probably formal board presentation, as I'll be departing the department in the summer. I've enjoyed my role and the privilege and honor of serving as the Career and Technical Education Director. I look forward to really working hard and completing some things before summer ends and I move on to new ventures, but wanted to thank you for your support for career and technical education in early middle colleges under my leadership for the past 6 years. So thank you. Moving on to our numbers. The number and percent of students enrolled in CTE programs by gender. CTE enrollment grew for 4 years, dropped during the first full year of the pandemic, and has been rebuilding over the last 2. The total number of students enrolled in CTE in 2022-23 showed a positive 2% change compared to the prior year. The percentage of all high school students who were enrolled in CTE increased to 24% in 2023 compared to 21-22. Looking at the number of students enrolled in CTE programs by subgroups, the percent for English language learners and economically disadvantaged students was considerably greater than the overall percentage, indicating improvement in serving 3 populations. Approximately the same number of students with disabilities were enrolled in 2022-23 as in 21-22. Looking at the number of students enrolled in CTE programs by ethnicity, while the overall percentage change in CTE enrollment in 2022-23 was 2% compared to 21-22, the percent change for Asian, African American, Black students, Hispanic, and 2 or more races increased considerably more than that. The number of Native American and Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander students declined slightly compared to the previous year of 21-22. Looking at the number of CTE completers by gender, the number of CTE completers peaked in 2019-2020, declined during the pandemic, but has increased in 22-23 compared to the prior 2 years. Similarly, the total number of CTE students also peaked in 1920, declined in 2021, but continued the upward trend in 22-23. Looking at the number of CTE completers by ethnicity, as noted on the previous slide, the overall percent change in CTE completers between 2015-16 and 22-23 was 36%, while the increase over the same period by race varied, with greater increases for Asian, Hispanic, 2 or more races, and lower increases for Black or African American students, Native American or Alaska Native students, and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander students. Looking at the number of CTE completers now by student group, there was an increase in CTE completers between 2015 and 2016 and 22-23 for students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and English language learners. The percent change for English learners and economically disadvantaged students was greater than the overall change across all CTE students. Looking at the number of students who received a high school diploma by gender, the number of CTE students who received a high school diploma declined slightly in 22-23 compared to 21-22, but still represented of a positive percent change of 38% compared to 2015-2016, with males increasing more than females. The percentage of students earning a high school diploma still exceeds 95%, a slight increase in the percentage compared to 21-22. The number of students who received a high school diploma by student group. Each group except Native American and Alaskan Native increased compared to 2015-2016 school year. The percent change for Asian, Hispanic, and 2 or more races was greater than the percent change for all students, while the percent change for Black or African American students was considerably less than the percent change of 38% for all students combined in the number of Native American or Alaska Native students who graduated with 4 fewer than 2015-16. Looking at the number of students who received a high school diploma by student group, significantly more CTE students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged CTE students, and CTE students who are English language learners graduated from high school in 2022-23 compared to 2015-16, with a greater percent change for economically disadvantaged students and English language learners than 38% change for students overall. When we look at the efforts of CTE to expand secondary learning opportunities, thank you for your support with the Perkins State Plan that we brought before the board last fall and early this winter. Our plan is in the process of being uploaded into the federal portal for approval, and we are taking and driving forward on identifying more credentials for students. And so we're carrying through the plan we started 4 years prior, and we're going to continue that momentum. Because when you look at the second bullet, we have 378 post-secondary recognized credentials students can earn. When you see that number, you're probably thinking, wow, well, Brian said 326 in January, but said 351 in February. That's how dynamic this number is and continually changes. And we're proud of that we're meeting the needs of our regions that deliver career and technical education programming while meeting the worker pipeline needs of our employers. And so it's a real strong win for us, and so we're moving forward with that. We are going to do some new work with our intermediate and local school districts. One is working on CTE deserts. And the work that we're doing with CTE deserts is identifying similar characteristics within school districts or counties across the state where one area may have much more access to CTE in CTE programs and types of CTE programs than a district with the same characteristics someplace else. Trying to see if we can learn and leverage and share those lessons of peer-to-peer working together. So we're excited about that. And Dr. Rice, thank you for your support with the CTE Deserts work. We're also working with Advanced CTE, our National State Directors Association for Career and Technical Education, on the Opportunity Gap initiative. And the Opportunity Gap is taking this data we're talking about right now, diving down into it, and seeing what we can do at the local level and at the regional level to help create more opportunities and access for students. And so we're going to be continuing to work with our regions and local school districts. We had a webinar meeting a few weeks back, and then we're going to have another meeting with a smaller test focus group, and we're going to go statewide in the fall. So we can help districts identify student groups that may not have this, achieving at the same level or have the same opportunities and why. And so we're excited that we can hopefully drive these numbers up further and further, and I personally look forward to seeing that growth. We have a CTE success story. Ms. Jackson of Corona, Michigan is the National FFA President for Future Farmers of America. This year, she will be representing National FFA, traveling over 100,000 miles over the course of the year. She's taken a year off for collegiate studies, and in January, she's going to be in Japan. What an amazing experience for a young person. Our CTSOs are just growth opportunities that are uncomparable for our students. We also have been working in collaboration with our early childhood friends on the Future Proud Michigan launch initiative. In the United States Department of Education Best Practices Clearinghouse identified our work here as a national model, came to Michigan, put together a video, and are showcasing the work that we're doing. And you can see that we have Piper up in the picture, and she has the child development, or she has the youth associate certificate, and she is working in a child care facility in an advanced role. And so right out of high school, going and doing this good work. This also helps meet some of the worker pipeline needs that we have in Michigan because it allows more parents to go back to work, helping strengthen our economy. We have another student from the UP, and Angelo is in a career pathway for electrician, and he was studying that up in Dickinson Ironson, and has been doing really well and liked the engagement of the work, and he now has a job with a local employer. And so a great opportunity for him as well. So from across the state, just a few little examples of the great work that we're doing in CTE. Moving on to early middle colleges. Number of students enrolled in the early middle college CTE program by gender has trended up through the pandemic. During 22-23, there was a slight increase of 61 students in enrollment. Looking at the number of students enrolled in an EMC program by ethnicity, since 2015-16, data indicates an upward trend for all student groups enrolled in EMC programs, with the largest increases for Asian, Black, or African American students, Hispanic or Latino students, and 2 or more races. Looking at the number of students enrolled in EMC programs by student groups, since 2015-16, the data indicates an upward trend for all student groups, with English language learners at 254%, and economically disadvantaged learners at 138%. One of the pieces of an early middle college at the department that we really work with our intermediate school districts and local school districts offering those programs is to really work with student populations and help those first generation students, many of whom would fall into either one of those categories. Looking at the number and percent of students who successfully obtained their high school diploma and earned an EMC outcome, the EMC students who received their high school diploma in one of the 5 CTE outcomes has increased since 2015-2016. The second outcome, in addition to the diploma, is either 60 transferable credits, an associate's degree, a professional certification, a Michigan Early Middle College certification, or participation in a registered apprenticeship. Looking at the number of students who enrolled did not complete and exited to attend college or some other post-secondary education training program. The number of students who enrolled, did not complete and exited for some other program has continued to increase. And we are good with those increases in some of those numbers because it represents a student that were enrolled in an early middle college. They decided that while they were in that, they wanted to exit at 12th grade and then go on to their learning experience. It's not necessarily bad. You'll notice there's a few less than 22, 23, but the numbers still really do stay pretty steady, and so we're excited about that. We have another success story, and this is about our early middle college student, Ms. Tran, who graduated from Holt High School and Lansing Community College Fire Academy and LCC's EMT program with 60 transferable college credits, and she's currently working with the DeWitt Fire Township Fire Department and plans to become a paramedic. And you can see in the little box, that was the headline in the Lansing State Journal who did a story on her for her local school district. So we're excited about that. Looking down to the south, there's in Jackson College, down with the Lenawee ISD Academy, there were 16 students, and you can see 847 college credits were earned by those students in their early middle college program. And that's quite a testament to their abilities while they're in high school to earn that many credits. And you can see the numbers that go along. But you can also see that we have 2,552 volunteer hours. Part of an early middle college is also participating in being part of your community and teaching volunteerism. When we look at what the department is doing to expand CTE or EMC, secondary learning opportunities, continue to work with Section 61B, which expands current tech ed and dual enrollment opportunities with early middle colleges and CTE programs in general. We also have expansion grants, so districts can apply to expand their programs for up to $50,000 to make that effort possible to offer more opportunities. And it offsets that expense. We recently become involved in an initiative, national initiative called Accelerate Ed, and it's working to develop seamless pathways to degrees and careers. And Dr. Edwards and I, we have staff from both of our offices working on that with MCAN and other advocacy organizations across the state that want to expand access to college and career. And this year, we continued to roll out additional written guidance in EMC for our programs, which included a referral guide, a national school lunch program guidelines. And so when we think about the whole school lunch piece, it can be really difficult for the students that are attending their high school, but they're also on the college campus, sometimes on the college campus for a full day, that need to have an opportunity to eat lunch. And so working together with the Office of Health and Nutrition Services, Diane, am I right? Okay. We put that together to help our people in our local school districts and intermediate school districts access the resources so their children could eat. And we also put together an EMC apprenticeship guidance for everyone. So I'm going to pass this off to my friend and colleague, Dr. Edwards.
Thank you, Dr. Piles, and good afternoon. We're going to turn our attention specific to advanced placement data. Districts may offer advanced placement courses to prepare students for annual optional AP exams. And a reminder that passing AP exams with a score of 3 or higher can lead to students earning post-secondary college credit. So as we look at the number of and percent of students enrolled by gender, this slide shows the number and percent of students enrolled. While there is not a change in percent of eligible students from the 21-22 school year to 22-23, following pre-pandemic and pandemic year declines, there was an increase in AP participation, the beginning of an upturn last year in the 22-23 school year. Looking at the number of students enrolled in AP by ethnicity, comparatively across this data, we find that different student ethnic groups, with the exception of students representing Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, all of our student ethnicity groups had an increase in AP enrollment and participation. As presented here, we will note that there was a 15% increase of economically disadvantaged students participating in AP courses from the school year 2021-22 to 22-23. The slight decrease in participation from those not economically disadvantaged may be attributed to these students taking advantage of other CTE and other types of options, just a wealth of opportunity for our young people, and we want to encourage that. Looking at the number of students taking one or more AP exams and the number of AP exams taken, on this slide we see that both the number of AP exams taken and the number of students taking one or more AP exams increased in the 22-23 school year over the previous school year. Taking a look at the number of students by ethnicity taking one or more AP exams, when we reflect upon these numbers, we see the students taking, the number of students by ethnicity taking one or more AP exams in the 22-23 school year, we see an increase across nearly all of our identified groups. The highest one-year exam participation difference being with our students identified as Black or African American and our students identified as Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. Looking at AP performance, just a reminder that a passing score with, passing an AP exam with a score of 3, 4, or 5 may lead to students earning post-secondary college credit. And this slide shows that there was an increase both in the number of students earning an AP exam score of 3, 4, or 5, as well as an increase in the number of AP exams with scores of 3, 4, or 5 during the 22-23 school year. Considering the number of AP tests taken by students for potential college credit, in the past year, there were increases in the number of students earning a score of 3, 4, or 5 across most of the identified ethnicity groups. Students identified as Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander and students identified as Black or African American showed the highest gains in scores of 3, 4, or 5 in the 22-23 school year. Our efforts to expand secondary learning opportunities for advanced placement include, we continue to be a part of the College Board AP tool effort. Our state superintendent sent letters in November of 2022 to the parents and guardians of over 40,000 Michigan students who demonstrated on the PSAT 8-9 and the PSAT 10 to have substantial ability to succeed in AP or similarly rigorous coursework. This effort more than doubled when we sent letters in November of 2023 to nearly 90,000. The intent of the letter is to encourage parents and students to to consider advanced coursework with substantial rigor, such as opportunities in AP, CTE, early middle college, dual enrollment, and international baccalaureate. These letters may provide validation and motivation to students to stay in school and graduate and allow them to see themselves in new learning spaces, as we heard the young lady earlier this morning who indicated she didn't really think that she could succeed in an AP course until she had opportunity to take that. In addition to motivating our Michigan students to participate in expanded secondary learning opportunities, MDE supports students to participate in AP and college-level exam placement, or the CLEP testing, which may award college credits depending on the score they received. The exam fees are reimbursed by MDE to local school districts. For 2022-23, MDE reimbursed nearly $900,000 for AP and CLEP exams for free and reduced price lunch eligible students, a metric that is used to determine both federal and state funding opportunities. MDE also publishes a cross-reference list of AP and CLEP scores needed to receive credit that is specific to all of the public community and four-year colleges in Michigan. This list is updated annually. In 2022-23, MDE reimbursed $859,000 in supportive funding to help students in need to take 17,555 AP exams and over $11,000 to reimburse students in need of taking 230 CLEP exams. Looking at dual enrollment, participation in our dual enrollment provides high school students the post-secondary opportunity to earn degree programs, to participate in post-secondary degree programs under the Post-Secondary Dual Enrollment Act. Students who participate in dual enrollment have the opportunity to earn college credit while still in high school. Looking at the number of students enrolled in DE, our dual enrollment participation has remained relatively constant over the past years, despite the 5% decrease in eligible students' total statewide enrollment over the same time frame. The number of students participating in dual enrollment increased during the 22-23 school year. It should be noted that dual enrollment report requirements do not include breaking down participation by gender, economic status, or ethnic group identification. Oops, I missed one, I think. Yeah, oh, wait. Okay, now we've got the sticky fingers going on, right? Okay, there we go. MDE continues to provide encouragement, technical assistance, and support to districts implementing dual enrollment programs. The Office of Educational Support's Education Experience Unit and the CTE Office have been collaborating and presenting together at different conferences and symposiums that have focused on dual enrollment and early middle colleges. MDE continues to facilitate post-secondary opportunities with many state organizations. MDE staff are collaborating with many different state and national groups as well. The staff regularly meets with MyHeart, which is the Michigan Higher Education Attainment Roundtable, Accelerate Ed, as you heard Dr. Piles mention, and the My College Access Network. MDE has also collaborated with MASSP, or the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals, on a series of presentations around dual enrollment, which were open to the public and partner members. Turning our attention to International Baccalaureate, secondary schools may apply to be an authorized IB World School. IB diploma program completion meets the Michigan Merit Curriculum Standards for participating students. Upon successful completion of an IB assessment related to IB courses taken, a student is awarded an IB transcript. Students have the potential to earn credit at several colleges around the state based upon the IB exam score received. Looking at the number of students enrolled in International Baccalaureate programs, the participation has remained relatively consistent over previous years with a slight decrease in 22-23. Again, it should be noted that participation in IB is based upon the school or district's desire to offer the program and then to make application and then be awarded authorization to offer the program by IB. Oops, I missed one. Oop, all right, I think going back again. Okay, there we are. This is delicate, isn't it? When we look at the data of our students enrolled in IB that identify within specific ethnic groups, we acknowledge that there has been a downward shift in participation, seeing a decrease in percentage change for several identified ethnic groups as it relates to students enrolled in IB. And this may be based upon the expansion of CTE and, as we've shared before, multiple other options that are available to our young people to explore post-secondary or higher rigor learning opportunities. I think I missed one. Oh. Okay, yeah, we're having some issues here, aren't we? Go back, sorry. Did I miss that? No, I said that one. Right? Yeah, okay. On this slide, we see the number of students enrolled in IB in relation to the economically disadvantaged and not economically disadvantaged students. MDE continues its efforts to expand secondary learning opportunities for International Baccalaureate participations. Districts with an authorized IB diploma program receive support from MDE for exam costs related to qualified students. MDE also has a webpage and an education consultant whose responsibilities include the provision of some supports to schools in this area. I will now turn it over to Ms. Terry Rink, Director of our Special Education Program, to take us further into the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to just qualify my part of this report by saying that most of the students with disabilities I'm going to talk to you about are represented in the data that was shared by my colleagues, which I'm really happy to see the increases there. These are specific measures that are consistent with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So what you have in front of you is a set of compliance data that comes from Michigan State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report. When I talk about compliance, that is the extent to which districts are meeting their obligation on behalf of students with disabilities. The data gets submitted to the Federal Office of Special Education Programs each February. The most current data is from federal fiscal year 2021-22, which was submitted February 1st of 2023. The Office of Special Education submitted data for federal fiscal year 2022-23 in February 1st of 2024. That data is currently being validated by the Office of Special Education Programs and will be released in June. All states are required to collect and report data on the percent of youth age 16 and above with an individualized education program that includes appropriate measurable post-secondary goals that are measurable, annually updated and based upon age-appropriate transition assessments, transition services, including courses of study that reasonably enable the student to meet post-secondary goals, and annual IEP goals related to the student's transition service needs. There also must be evidence that the student was invited to the IEP team meeting where transition services were discussed, and evidence that, if appropriate, a representative from any participating agency was invited to the IEP team meeting with the prior consent of the parent or the student if they have reached the age of majority. The state target for compliance is 100%, and so you can see that although compliance is steadily improving, in federal fiscal year 2022, the state target was not met. All of those things that I detailed to you, every single one of those have to be completed for every single child for every IEP, which is a really high and rigorous standard. So our districts work really hard to make sure those things are completed, and I think they've made really impressive progress. The next set of data are the results requirement that also comes from Michigan State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report. Again, the most current data is from federal fiscal year 2021-22, which was submitted February 1st of 2023, and then the Office of Special Education submitted the federal fiscal year 2022-23, February 1st of 2024, and that data is currently with OSEP and being validated prior to their release in June. All states are required to collect and report data on the percent of youth who are no longer in secondary school, had an individualized education program in effect at the time they left school, and were either enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving high school, or enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school, or enrolled in higher education or some other post-secondary education training program, or competitively employed in some other employment within 1 year of leaving high school. The data shown here reflects category C, which has a state target of 75.2%. Michigan did meet this state target in federal fiscal year 2022 with 77%. This last slide really is an outcome of some work that was done, referenced as the path forward. It was part of an outcome of that work that included the formation of the Special Education Instructional Leadership Network. SELN was established by the Michigan Association of Intermediate School Districts with the purpose of creating a network that works collaboratively toward improving results and increasing compliance through increased collaboration and communication of various educational and support agencies that serve the interests of students with disabilities. The focus is on best practices in special education that are broad and applicable to all students, as well as those that are unique to special populations or low incidence populations, such as students who are deaf or have a visual impairment. SELN is also working with MDE and others to address educator shortage specific to special education teachers and service providers. Additional efforts include a focus on the cost of providing special education and the need to be active in efforts at the early childhood level and throughout a student's educational career. The work around transition services is designed to increase graduation rates and post-secondary outcomes. It's designed to ensure each student's high school experience is rigorous and aligned with their unique needs, their IEP goals, and their post-secondary desires. Special education works in partnership with general education to offer the support and the special education needed to enhance rigorous outcomes for each student.
Thank you very much, Board. When we think about school years, particularly the high school years, we want to ensure that programs and services that each student participates in are rigorous and aligned to their post-school desires. Our efforts, along with those of our ISDs and local districts in the areas of career and tech ed, early middle college, AP, dual enrollment, IB, and strong transition services, creates the many and various opportunities that are needed for all of our students to attain success both in high school and in their futures. Different students have different needs and different dreams, and those differing needs and dreams are met through a variety of rigorous programs that are offered in our high schools. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you presenters. Thank you so much. It's 3:20 Board. What do you have to share with our presenters about that voluminous presentation? Dr. Robinson.
Thank you for all the work. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lipton.
Thank you for the report. I would like to learn a little bit more about what the plans are for dealing with CTE deserts, mainly because my sense is that CTE programs are can be a little bit more costly to run, and I know, for example, in Oakland County, we do have a very, very rigorous CTE program supported by, I think, even a county millage, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think that, you know, in your opinion, what do you feel we might need to be able to do in order to expand career and technical education given the cost constraints? Is it, you know, more funding? Would it be, is it a sort of a capacity staffing issue? What are some sort of future thoughts and expansion?
So as we look at the CTE desert work that we're doing, Dr. Rice pulled together a small legislative group as well, and we're talking with them and working toward proposals that would set the characteristics for districts that could apply for competitive funding where they don't have the available resources to implement the program, with some staffing subsidies that would be greater in year 1 and lesser in year 2, 3 than fully adopted by the district. If districts met particular criteria for needing to expand their current technical education program offerings. We're also working in collaboration with Dr. Jacobs at the University of Michigan Youth Policy Lab to help analyze that data so that we can start drawing these characteristics. And then at our upcoming deserts meeting, where we've invited the Current Tech Ed Perkins regions, and we've asked them to bring with them people from their county technical campus and their local school districts, because the majority of programming is in the local school district for CTE, so that we can find out from them what they believe they're doing that allows them to offer more CTE programming than districts with similar characteristics, and let them start to talk together. Because as much as it's about going and having the funding and the seed money, because one thing that we don't have for CTE is seed money. You have to be up and operating. Unless you have a countywide millage, then you can use that for that piece. But it's also about tapping into leadership. And when I look at my roles that I had at Shiawassee RESD and at Berry and Risa, neither of my counties had a millage. And we had robust CTE program offerings through the investment of the local school districts. And Lakeshore Public Schools in Berrien County was having a difficult time passing their millage. And we were like, well, how about if you add on to that welding lab and upgrade that? And then we went to the manufacturers. And they're like, well, can you add on to your machine tool trades lab too? Once we got the business people in there, their millage went through. So there's lots of other ways to tap into like the business community to get support for like millages, but also to look at systems like Kalamazoo RESA, which Education for Employment, it's been written about in the research probably going back 3 decades. I remember reading about that when I was doing my lit review many, many moons ago. And so it's also about leadership. So really trying to tap in and help people find opportunities that exist within that can be leveraged across the state. And like the example of Berrien County, which is a decent sized county, they offer machine tool trades and welding in North, Mid, and South County for all 14 districts to participate in. And trying to build those relationships of trust and showing that those pieces can exist. So going at it a multifaceted approach, but also educating some elected officials as to what the needs are and what we think some of the strategies would be.
So that was a really good answer.
Yeah.
There are financial issues, but there are leadership issues, there are partnership issues, there are connections across sector issues. Interestingly enough, it's not a partisan issue. That when you strip it back, you find out that there isn't much partisanship there at all. Folk from both sides of the aisle feel strongly about this. The business community feels strongly. And when the business community is involved, it is excited about being able to work toward expansion in one way, shape, or form, either with local money or with state money. There are also cultural or sociocultural issues. And sometimes we give short shrift to those. But I don't necessarily feel comfortable going to Ms. Evans' school as a 16-year-old. It's a mile away, and it has the program that I'm interested in, but I'm uncomfortable going into her school for whatever reason, or vice versa. That's a thing across the state. And sometimes it gets referred to euphemistically as a transportation issue. But when you pare it back, it's not really so much a transportation issue. It's a cross-group issue of one sort or another. Sometimes it's gender, sometimes it's socioeconomic status, sometimes it's ethnic, sometimes it's cross-district, sometimes it's cross-town rivals within the same district. But all of that is very much a thing, and we have to work on that. That's not something that the state can do, but the state can certainly share examples of local jurisdictions that have broken down some of these barriers. We're in an ISD whose largest local school district doesn't participate in the CTE millage, but that you don't participate in the CTE millage, a decision that was made, by the way, 50 years ago, that you don't participate in that millage and you don't participate in CTE programming for your babies. Those are two different things. One does not go hand in glove with the other. So there's, as the expression goes, there's a lot of there. The one piece that I wanted to underscore was kind of that sociocultural piece that sometimes we give short shrift to. We're a little uncomfortable talking about it. It's a real thing. And sometimes it's within the same district. You just don't want to go 2 miles away to a crosstown rival for whatever reason. But that's where they have your program, and that's where you could benefit. Thank you very much, Ms. Lipton. I appreciate the question. I appreciate Dr. Piles giving the answer. Mr. Bullock, questions?
No, I was listening.
I'm at that point in the state board meeting where I start calling on people.
Even in
Dr.
the back,
Pritchett.
I actually understood, we have those problems not just with what we were talking about, the millage, and you explained it, but in the boundary. So the guys below 6 Mile don't want to go to school on top of 6 Mile. It's a different dynamic. So even though it's been even when we close schools, we don't think about those in that area going to the school in this area, and now we wonder why we got fights and shootings and a behavioral crux.
I was speaking with the state board president about that just last week.
Yeah.
So I agree. Dr. Pritchett.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. There's a lot here. But to focus in on AP, because we had that wonderful presentation this morning, not that I'm comparing, but kids will always take first place. But it was interesting. It's a pilot program, and I understand that, but there's only 13 in that AP class, which for most high schools, you can't run a class with only 13 students for a myriad of reasons. So the numbers are improving, and that's great, but I also think about those rural schools or those schools that may not have qualified staff, and so the access becomes an issue. Now with virtual, a little bit easier, but again, you run into the same situation, I think, as getting on a bus and going to a CTE program. A lot of kids don't want to do the virtual, though. I think they're getting a little bit better about it. And I appreciate the comment about that if a student scores a 3, 4, or 5, they could get credit. Any high school students I interact with, I always remind them of that, because the final decision is the college they go to. Not to say you shouldn't take the exam, not to say you shouldn't take AP, but I always like to be the realist. So anyways, I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. We appreciate the fact that you were in this for more than a minute. In it for more than a minute, said a poet who doesn't know it. Ms. Tilley?
I appreciate the presentation. Definitely am a proponent of CTE and expanding the programming. Transportation can definitely be an issue. I think, and the example I think of is, I think OTEC in Oakland County, wonderful facility, but for some people, for some students, it might take 20 minutes to get there. And so 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then 20, 30 minutes to get back. So that's an hour out of their day. So definitely would like to see more opportunities for our students so that they can have those opportunities when they graduate. Like I've said before, some need to graduate and go straight into the workforce, depending on their situations at home. So this is so important for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Mr. McMillan? No? Okay, very good. Dr. Pugh, you want to bring us home?
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the amazing work that you all continue to do. You know, and just, you know, the more that we can share with parents and that they can feel trust in all of these opportunities for their children, the better we are. And so thank you all for doing that. And congratulations on your next venture, and you will be missed.
She punched me again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job. Board members, at 3:30 were remarks of the state superintendent and remarks of the state board president. Board members and members of the community, the U.S. Department of Education recognized the work of school librarians on April 4th, School Librarian Day. Governor Whitmer has declared April School Library Month in Michigan. We appreciate our libraries and librarians who help us improve literacy for our young people. Relatedly, board members, yesterday morning, several MDE staff members, including Office of Partnership Districts Director Gloria Chapman, Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director Dr. Renee Garcia, Office of Public and Governmental Affairs Director Bob Wheaton, Office of Educational Supports Assistant Director Dr. Jennifer Saylor, Literacy Consultant Katie Dennis, and consultant Cindy Green and I were in Benton Harbor to celebrate the opening of diverse classroom libraries in all 32 elementary school classrooms in the district. When children returned from spring break yesterday, They all found a small, diverse classroom library with approximately 100 wide-ranging books, bookshelves, beanbag chairs, which are a lot easier to get up from when you're young than when you are old,
That's for sure.
and some carpeting in a library nook. The libraries were funded with a few sources of revenue: funds from a competitive federal literacy grant for which MDE successfully competed and made Benton Harbor a sub-grantee, funds from the district's third pandemic relief grant, and regional assistance grant funding provided by MDE through Berrien RISA. Benton Harbor received a great deal of help with the project, including Benton Harbor staff and community members, Berrien RISA Superintendent Eric Hopstock and his staff, Whirlpool Corporation staff, and MDE staff. MDE staff have provided professional development in the use of the diverse books. I want to thank all of the people that I just mentioned, as well as MDE consultant Jennifer Boykins. Special thanks to Dr. Renee Garcia. Thank you very much for her work with Benton Harbor staff in this effort. It truly takes a village. It is not a large district, but it is surprisingly challenging to set up 32 classroom libraries and 32 elementary schools throughout an urban public school district. So kudos to all that were involved. It really was a wonderful effort. Board members, it was George Orwell who wrote in Animal Farm, Ms. Jackson, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. By analogy, one might suggest all dollars are equal, but some are more equal than others. Many of you have likely heard about local school district finances in the last couple of months. A few districts have announced financial issues, Dr. Chapman, in fiscal year 24 and in preparation for their fiscal year 25 budgets. There have been stories in local communities on this issue. There's even been an effort to explain these financial issues, Dr. Carnell, though the explanations, the end of federal pandemic relief funding and the slowing of state revenue increases, have been insufficient to get at all that local school districts are or may be experiencing financially. Districts are beginning to become more aware of and focus more on structural balance. Structural Balance Board is the financial condition when recurring revenue is equal to or greater than recurring expenditures. Recurring revenue equal to or greater than recurring expenditures. And I'm leaning on those adjectives, recurring and recurring. Take a simple example. You make $50,000 a year on your job, and your Aunt Maggie gives you $5,000 a year for each of 2 years. You spend exactly $55,000, Ms. Evans, in your recurring household expenses each of the 2 years, and all seems well. At the beginning of the 3rd year, Aunt Maggie dies. She leaves you nothing in her will. You're still making $50,000 in salary, in recurring revenue, and still have $55,000 in recurring household expenditures. With Aunt Maggie gone, though, you're out of structural budget balance. And what is obvious was what had been shrouded by Aunt Maggie's generosity for 2 years. You had a structurally imbalanced budget. You were spending more on a recurring basis than you were making, but this fact was covered up by Aunt Maggie's gift, which wasn't indefinitely recurring. You have a structural deficit of $5,000, which you had had for 2 years, but which was hidden by the non-recurring revenue. Follow the bouncing ball on this board. It is true that the two challenges facing local school districts are the looming deadline for spending non-recurring federal pandemic relief and the slowing of state revenue growth. These are two, but not all of the financial challenges facing local school districts. The end of federal pandemic relief funding, whose obligation deadline is September 30th of this year, is a pending elimination of non-recurring revenue. While this non-recurring revenue, strictly speaking, has nothing to do with structural balance, For some districts, the amount of federal pandemic relief was so high and the need to spend it so relatively quick that many districts found themselves using this non-recurring revenue for recurring costs. Coming off the use of this non-recurring revenue source will be difficult for those that felt as if they had no other choice than to use the funds for non-recurring expenditures. Slowing state revenue growth is different, Ms. Lipton. It isn't the cessation of a revenue source, but rather the reduction in percentage growth. And the revenue source isn't, for the most part, a non-recurring one. Most of state education revenue is recurring. Nonetheless, if a district expected the fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 budgets to be new normal budgets, rather than the extraordinary back-to-back historical budgets that they were, they could have made decisions, and can still make decisions, that adversely affect them in the coming years. While the end of non-recurring federal pandemic relief funding and the slowing of recurring state education aid are the most likely two challenges of this new financial period, there are other challenges as well. A third challenge is that some districts may have chosen to assume fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 budget increases for the duration of multi-year labor agreements. If these sorts of increases don't materialize in the out years of a labor contract, the district can be in financial difficulty. If school district labor and management enter into multi-year contracts, they need to understand clearly what the district can afford in a settlement on an enduring basis and what it cannot. No party benefits from a district that can't afford a labor settlement. One way or the other, district management needs to work closely with its labor unions on school finances. Likewise, district administration needs to work closely with the local school board. A fourth challenge of this new financial period is that in some cases, fund balances have grown and may grow this year as well because of non-recurring revenue that permits the saving of recurring revenue. At the same time, there may be the need to cut to maintain or redevelop structural balance. This is a very, very hard circumstance for a layperson, a non-financial person, to understand, and can seem not simply paradoxical, but counterintuitive. A fifth challenge of this financial period is related to communicate to internal and external partners and stakeholders the definition of structural balance, the extent to which the district is in structural balance, the extent to which the district is running a surplus, and how it is that a district could grow a fund balance but grow a structural deficit at the same time, among others. A sixth and final challenge, board, of this new financial period is the effort to move a district from structural deficit to structural balance. This may take more than a year or two. It may take a multi-year plan. It may take a multi-year plan in which the district reduces its fund balance, but reduces its structural deficit with a multi-year gap closing plan to bring recurring revenue and recurring expenditures into balance. This challenge is financial and political, but it also involves substantial communication issues, Mr. Wheaton. It's hard to explain why it may be necessary to run deficits over a few year period of time, but to have the deficit diminish each year until a planned structural balance arises. We have more than 800 local school districts in Michigan. Many will navigate this new financial period with ostensibly few challenges. Others, however, for a variety of reasons, including the aforementioned, may struggle with this new normal. Just as Orwell, Dr. Robinson, knew how paradoxical it was to say that all animals are equal, some animals are more equal than others, so too is it paradoxical to paraphrase by saying all funding is equal, but some is more equal than others. That said, recurring and non-recurring revenue are not the same. And the extent to which districts have relied on non-recurring revenue to balance their budgets, the extent to which they have entered into longer-term contracts that assume fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 percentage revenue growth in fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26, the extent to which they struggle with long-term planning, all of these will affect how districts navigate this new normal. And with that, I turn you over to our esteemed board president, Dr. Pamela Pugh. Dr. Pugh.
I'm going to give my report, but I didn't know if anyone had questions for you. I think that we usually allow time for questions.
If people want to ask questions, that's great. If people want to struggle to remain awake in the wake of my remarks,
Okay.
I understand that.
Well, I'll carry on with my report, and then if there's anything, we can circle back. And I just want to highlight just a few activities that I participated in to start with. So reading, had the opportunity to do a reading at Thomas White Middle School in Bridgeport, and thank you, Liz, for helping to set that up. Attended an event called Elect Her, organized by Haley Clack in Flint, Michigan at International Academy of Flint, and just speaking to students about the work that we do here at the board, as well as the importance of women in leadership. Also attended Delta Days that was organized by Delta Sigma Theta sorority at Saginaw High School, and was able to share insights with other elected officials into the importance of civic responsibility, and help to enrich their understanding of the democratic process and inspire them to become active participants in shaping our community's future. And it was really interesting to have the conversations about what we do, how bills are made, and right there seeing students start to think about who was responsible for organizing their senior class trip. And they're talking amongst themselves and they're solving problems. So it was interesting to see our future leaders thinking in that way. Want to also recognize school librarians for the work that they do to provide students with resources, lessons, spaces, and opportunities that they need to succeed. And school librarians across Michigan will be holding read-ins during the month of April, as it is School Library Month, as Dr. Rice mentioned. And that will be to celebrate school libraries. And they are asking all school community members to share their reasons to love school libraries during this month. I think we should have all received an email where Michigan Association of School Librarians expressed their appreciation to the state board for our support for equity of access to school library staff by certified school librarians, as the work of school librarians aligns with our strategic plan. And then MASL hopes to continue to work with us, and in particular, wanting to make sure that certified school librarians in our state, that there's a creation of learner academic standards for school library. Just want to also reiterate that this month is National Healthy Schools Month, and today in particular is April 9th is Healthy Schools Day, and created by, this is a 22nd annual celebration by Healthy Schools Network, and the theme today is Air, Just Air, and looking inside of schools and child care facilities, and what is noted is breathing clean air in school allows every child to do better and every teacher to stay healthy. And just want to note, in light of the conversation that was taking place today, is that we know, and it's been stated, I think numerous times, is when we look at the school environment, we have to look at the physical environment, the air, the water, but we also have to look at the social, emotional, and mental health of those environments as well. And to that extent, just want to reiterate again that I would like to ask the legislative committee to look at the three resolutions that were proposed by Board Member Snyder, as well as looking at our current, researching our current policies and resolutions that have been passed, because there are a hand, there are plenty that are there, and seeing if there's any need to expand. Also doing crosswalk between today's presentation, what's existing, and what is still needed. So just wanted to bring that up. Also, just wanted to continue on with the discussion that Dr. Rice has presented around school finances and the challenges. And I'm thinking about an eighth challenge. And yes, we are looking at the COVID cliff. We're looking at the now gone surpluses, or Aunt Maggie's non-recurring gifts. And just thinking through as we're having these conversations about a second education department that is being propped up, and just saying that this is not the time to spread our thin resources even more thinly. And I think about the roads, and MDOT oversees the roads, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So Michigan Department of Transportation, if the roads, the darn roads aren't getting fixed, we don't prop up another Department of Transportation. And not saying that our education isn't improving. We know that there's much more improvement. There's innovation that can be done, and that is what we're working towards here at this table, as well as what those of you in this Department of Education do daily and do well. And we hope to be able to pour more into the Michigan Department of Education to continuously improve an education system that was on a decline way before we got here, maybe even here physically, some of us were even born. So there is work that we can do, and we definitely need to make sure that we're pouring into this department. And as we are looking at those 7 challenges to our finances in education, to create another department is not the most sound approach. And I just want to also mention that because there's this thought about the biggest threat to education is doing something over and over again and expecting different results. And I will say that I agree with that. And I will reiterate, and I will say over and over again, and I will commend the Department of Education, because our Great Start program was regarded as one of the best in the country while it was housed here in Michigan Department of Education. And it was a model across the country. And my leap is in fact doing something over and over again and expecting different results. When we look at each of the previous governors who tried to do some sort of restructuring and an overhaul of public education, and how it negatively impacted our schools, and often it resulted in increased debt, schools being shut down, teachers and parents without input. Whether we look at Engler, who added $170 million to the debt of Detroit School District when he implemented a CEO model over the school district that didn't listen to parents or teachers. And enrollment dropped in Detroit. Granholm in 2008 invoked the emergency financial manager law and appointed Robert Bobb to run the schools. In his first year, he added $100 million to the DPS debt load. He shut down schools and created several campaigns that many would say was around false claims of dishonestly and issues that were designed to strengthen that control of that emergency management system. And enrollment again dropped. When Rick Snyder took 15 schools out of Detroit's system and created the Education Achievement Authority, EAA, all instruction was to be based on laptop computer programs designed for instructional purposes, but there were shortages of laptops and there were no instructional programs loaded. But we also know that that negatively impacted children and in Detroit, and we were able to stop that before it was further spread throughout the state. So I just want to add to this conversation around financial challenges and continue to challenge the propping up of another education department at a time when we are facing these financial challenges, and we're seeing up to 5,000 reports of 5,000 teachers that will be without jobs, or that positions that will be lost at a time when we know we are losing educators. Our children need educators. And so I'll pause there, and that is the end of my report.
I appreciate that, Dr. Pugh, and I appreciate the issues that you have raised in your report today. Board members, we are sitting at 3:52 p.m. and every early show has a late show, and typically the early show warms people up for the late show. And this is no exception today. The next item on today's agenda is the presentation by the Michigan Teacher of the Year and the Regional Teacher of the Year. We welcome Ms. Candace Jackson, the Michigan Teacher of the Year, third grade teacher in Man Learning Community, Detroit Public Schools Community District, back by popular demand. And joining Ms. Jackson is Ms. Lori Reichert, the Region 8 Teacher of the Year, second and third grade teacher at Childs Elementary, Lincoln Consolidated Schools. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. They are teachers and elementary teachers. They may, however, board call on you without you raising your hand. Presenters, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me once again, and I'm so glad to be joined by Lori. I'm Candace Jackson, as Dr. Rice said, and I'm joined here by Lori, and I guess she's going to introduce herself, and she'll get started.
Yeah, and could you click the device for me? I've been watching all day. That's what I'm most nervous about. So, hi, yes, my name is Lori Rickert. I am a second grade teacher at the Lincoln Consolidated Schools. I have been employed by the district for 23 years, going on 24 in the fall. Not only I've been a second grade teacher, I was also a third grade teacher at one point, but I still just teaching second grade right now. I was a 1994 graduate of Lincoln Consolidated Schools. My father was a 1960 graduate of Lincoln Consolidated Schools.
Wow,
my oldest son, Evan, will be a 2024 graduate of Lincoln Consolidated Schools, and my daughter, Gwen, will be a 2028 graduate. So not only are the Lincoln Consolidated Schools the people that raised me, I now get to turn the tables and help the youngest learners, and it's also helping to raise my family. So I'm very proud of my district. I'm a graduate of Eastern Michigan University. I hold a bachelor's degree from Eastern, and I also have a master's degree as a reading specialist. So hometown girl. That's right, Eagles. I was an Eagle, but my sisters were Hurons. When I'm not in the classroom, you'll find me in the softball fields with my daughter Gwen, and my son Evan just competed as a state level diver in the state of Michigan. So that's my most important job. Go ahead, Candace. So before I go into my presentation on cultivating a positive classroom environment, I want all of us in the room to just think about today the most influential person, adult person that you had in your, when you were of school age. Think about that person, whether it was a teacher or a religious leader. I want you to think about that and what made them so special to you. And I've been watching today, and I'll let you think about that for a minute, and I've heard the word rigor come up quite a bit, which is important. But most likely, that person that you're thinking of, it was about the relationships that you had with that person. And so I come to you today to talk about how to build a sense of community in the classroom and also how to foster positive relationships. I will talk about with students, and Ms. Jackson will be talking about cultivating positive relationship with our families of the students that we serve. So on this slide, my first thing to build a positive classroom community was establishing clear expectations with your students. I heard earlier PBIS, or positive behavior intervention support. That is a part of our district framework that we use. But teachers are also given the liberty to come up in a democratic type process of their expectations in the classroom. So I have these posters that are listed on the left and the right on how the students will agree to treat me, how I will agree to teach to give my students, I shouldn't say teach, how the students will treat each other, and then how the students will treat our classroom. But that's also with me, how I will, so we come up with this together, we agree on it. They're fluid documents throughout the year, so they can change, but this is just an idea of what they expect from all of us in the classroom. I think it creates a respectful environment. It involves students in the process. It's just not arbitrarily listing a list of rules and expecting them to follow them. They are part of the plan. The other thing, I told you. One thing I found to build community in the classroom too is starting my days with morning meetings. I didn't do this in my earlier career. It was called any early elementary people in here. We did calendar every morning where we would gather around the calendar. But once I was teaching virtually and then in a hybrid format, I began morning meetings. And what morning meetings just do, kind of set a positive tone for the day, welcome students, say, I'm so happy you're here. You can see there may be in my second grade class a fun fact of the day, a riddle of the day, maybe a brain teaser. And there's also a social emotional tied in with the morning meeting, a social emotional, even a CASEL competency that could be tied in for that day's learning. And it's about a 15 to 20 minute meeting. You can also see two polls of the day, asking children their preference, and it could be really low risk type questions like I have on the slide here, soccer or football. And it does help the children get to know each other and to create a safe space where they can express themselves, listen without responding, which I'm, listen to understand, not just to respond. That's one thing we're certainly working on in second grade. So I have just found that has been such a pivotal piece in just few minutes in the morning connecting with my students. And if you look at how you can view it in a high school or secondary, just those first few minutes of that class hour, checking in. It could be how students are doing or how they're feeling about the quiz that's coming up, just having some dialogue with them to hear from them and develop understanding from them. One thing that my district has adopted this year that I was very hesitant on was restorative, because I wasn't trained on it and didn't know a lot of information on it, was restorative practices with restorative circles. My second graders, we just call it circle time. It's a time where we circle up and get to know one another. The picture in the circle at the top of the slide is a very, very large restorative circle. They often say not to use that because it loses some intimacy, but kind of what restorative circles do is they really try to build connections between the students and their teacher. It builds trust. We laugh, we have a lot of fun. We get to know each other and provides a safety and really that we belong in that space. When I do restorative circles in my classroom, I remind them it's a safe space. We don't laugh at one another. We listen, and it really does, help with, empathy among learners. And again, it can start with very low risk questions like it could be pizza topping, pepperoni or cheese, go around the circle and listen to what your friends are saying. One of the recent restorative circle questions I asked my students was, how would your best friend describe you in one word? And the children were able to go around the circle. Each child has their own turn to talk. And it was really, I learned a lot from them. And it's really the most one of the most special times of my day. Can I get to it every day? No. I too want to make sure I cover that curriculum in a day, but it is some of my students' favorite part of our school day. I'm going to turn my page here. I have notes, not really using them. Collaboration. My students, I always say things are always better together. When I have to work on a project on my own, I may panic for a minute, but if I know I have Ms. Jackson here to help me on it, or one of my colleagues, I feel so much better about that. So I always think, gosh, my students must think those same things. Collaborating and doing projects like this, and we heard about this earlier, student-centered learning. I think about Mr. Reisman and his students with the collaboration I can tell that are going on in that AP African American Studies class is remarkable. Not only that, are the students driven for their learning, I could tell that relationship right there between that teacher and those students have been formed, and there's trust and there's safety, and was just lovely to witness that. Developing social skills among students. Again, there's effective learning and communication skills, and it's just increased engagement when students are collaborating together, and it's something that they are invested in and are excited about. Don't have a lot of behavior problems because they are really into it. And these are some of my students, both at the top and some of my students currently who are working on a STEM project with, it looks like some pipe cleaners, but you could have heard a pin drop in the room. And oftentimes after these collaboration initiatives, not initiatives, but the lessons in the classroom is we talk about like what went well with that, what didn't go well. How did it go with a partner that wasn't working very well with you? You know, these are skills that we have to develop all through our life, and we hash them out in early L and in my second grade class. And then we, of course, talk about celebrations, what went well. Did you work with someone today that you don't normally work with? And did you enjoy yourself? So I found that really positive. And my last slide here is smile and have fun. Greet these kids at the first thing in the morning, say goodbye to them in the afternoon. I know sometimes when I'm talking to my own children on the phone, or my mom, or my husband, it's like, okay, love you, bye. And I get a lot of those as I exit when the children leave the classroom. I get that, okay, bye, Mrs. Rickert, love you. And it's almost just innate in them. And I take pride in that they feel comfortable and they feel loved. So also listening to your students, they're your best critics. Get, exit surveys on how you think the lesson went, so take interest in their lives. The center picture right here is, I had a student in a church choir concert. It was on a Sunday morning. I knew it was important to her, so I came and I listened to her. Have a sense of humor, laugh with students, dance with them when you can. When they see you as a human, you can really touch their lives and get a lot done in the classroom as well. And on the left, I said attend after-school events. We are very, teachers are overworked, we're tired, but I tell you, once we do go to those after-school events, those are some of those special moments. So there are some of the teachers that I work with. We had a evening literacy night, a winter literacy night, and they are assisting with that. And the last picture on the right there, I say have fun. That is our superintendent, Mr. Robert Jansen, who showed up at recess one day and decided to play football with the fifth graders. Cool. And they will say that was the best day of their lives. So thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Jackson to talk about how to cultivate that relationships with families at home.
So shifting a little bit, although we know that relationship with the students is important. I know now that I'm out of the classroom this year, The morning is one of my favorite parts of the day because that's the time where I get to interact with the students. I stand in the hallway as they're coming in every morning, and there are certain students who tell me, they give me a rundown of their evening every single morning, so I know what their dog ate for dinner, what they had, I broke my crayon, and that's a very important part of the day. So I really do miss that. And that, like I said, that interaction with the boys and girls when they come in, that's the most special part of my day. And again, like she said, they come in and they say, well, we love you. And then they beg me to be their math teacher again. And then I want to ask them, well, what's wrong with your current math teacher? But, you don't want to open that can of worms. But my job is to talk more about building that relationship with the parents and a community, because we've all heard the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. But I saw this somewhere. It says it takes a village to raise a child and the continued support of that village to help the child succeed in school. When you talk about the holistic development of the child, it's important for parents, caregivers, community members, everyone to have a role in developing the children. And it's just a powerful reminder of the collective responsibility that we all share in creating this environment for the child to eventually thrive. It's just a photo. We often, at least monthly or bi-monthly, have parent engagement events in my building. So that's a photo of one of our parental engagement events where we bring the parents into the classroom or into the school to interact with the curriculum, interact with their students, and then take valuable things home so that they can work with their scholars at home. Benefits of family and community engagement. Obviously, increased student achievement across all student demographics, improved attendance and behavior. We know that you can't reach what you can't touch. And when you are engaging with the parents and the parents feel like they're partners, they're more likely to get the students to school so that you can teach them. And then if you have that relationship, it also curtails some behaviors, because I know that you have my mom on speed dial, or, I know that there's a relationship there. And then also, if I call that parent, the fact that we have a relationship, it doesn't feel like, oh, you're only calling me when there's something wrong. We have an established relationship. Another benefit is enhanced staff understanding of family and community needs. When you know your students intimately, you're more uniquely equipped to teach them. If you know what's making them tick, if you know what's going on in their home, if you know how many brothers and sisters they, all of those things, it impacts the way you can reach that student, and the relationship that you have with them makes the learning all the more relevant and meaningful for that student. And then lastly, it creates a stronger school reputation. When the parents feel like they're partners and not just customers at the school, when they feel like there's a true partnership there, they tell their friends, and word of mouth is better than any commercial you can develop for your school. Word of mouth is everything. Tips for engaging family and community members. Empower families with leadership opportunities. In the top left-hand corner, there's the lady sitting behind the table with the black shirt and the glasses. She was a parent in my classroom a couple years ago, and she was just a volunteer, and now she actually has a job at the school. She's the parent outreach coordinator. And at one of the events we had recently, she had a table where she was recruiting other parents to join a PTA or PTO. And she has parent field trips. So we don't just have field trips for the students, the parents go on field trips. So they've done painting with a twist, or they've gone to the trout farm to do team building as parents. And then they also have parent workshops. Encourage families to assist with homework by providing helpful resources. Some of the homework that we send home is way different than the homework that we did when we were kids. Math is completely different now, and a lot of the parents are lost. So sending home homework helpers and having PD for parents to come in to learn the curriculum so that they can assist their kids, that's beneficial. Creating volunteer opportunities for families and community members. So once they get that background check, putting them to work, A lot of parents are willing to help, they just don't know where to start. They don't feel like, some of them don't feel like they have a place, so give them a place to come, give them a place to work, and give them something to do because they want to be a part. And when they feel like they're a part, then they can help the students at home. And then using multiple communication methods. Backpack notes don't always make it home, so you're probably going to have to do text message blast or robocalls and electronic newsletters and social media reports, all of those things to get the parents updated and aware of what's going on in the school, because like I said, that backpack note 9 times out of 10 is not going to make it home. At least my kids didn't bring them home. I had to find everything out on my own. Um, Making data accessible. If you want to get the parents on board, they got to know what's going on. So having data chats, making sure that the grades are updated in electronic grade books, and that they know how to get on PowerSchool to view their students' grades. Making sure that they know their students' results on the standardized tests that they're taking. They know their M-STEP reports or their M-STEP data, and they know what their goal is for the next test so that they know what they need to work on. Host family-friendly engagement events. Again, my school, at least every other month, we're having a parental engagement event. The bottom picture, that actually was a couple of months ago. We had, every month we do a attendance incentive. Attendance, chronic absenteeism is a big issue in the city of Detroit. So this year, every month, we have we make a big deal about students with perfect attendance. And it started out with maybe 50 students who had perfect attendance. We had an event on Friday and we had over 100 students who had perfect attendance. And our theme last month, because we recognized the students who had perfect attendance for the month of March on Friday, and our theme was float into school every day, and then we had ice cream floats. So, float into school, and the students were so excited. We unboxed this new ice cream machine, and you would have thought that we had given them solid gold. It was really exciting. But those little things, and the parents come. So it's not just the students getting the ice cream, the parents are invited. So the parents are there, everyone's getting recognized, because at this age, honestly, if the parent isn't getting them there, then a 6-year-old isn't getting to school. So we're recognizing everybody. Acknowledge and celebrate students and school achievements regularly. So similarly, acknowledging perfect attendance, having honors assemblies and things like that, so that the students feel recognized and the parents are welcomed in the building. And then being sensitive to the diverse cultural backgrounds. This year, we went from having 0 to now over 20 Hispanic American families in my building. And last week, we had family reading night, and we had a whole room set aside for the MLLs. And we actually had the executive director of Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. His name was Mark Moreno, and he came in and he was the guest reader for them. And I think when you go back to that whole word of mouth piece, I think the fact that they're being welcomed and that we're welcoming them and we're making the rooms and we've created all of these opportunities, that's what's making more and more of the MLLs come, because they're telling their cousins and their brothers and sisters, well, bring your kids here. And our engagement event next month, we're having family game night. And I've facilitated this multiple years, but this year we're having multicultural game night. And so we have Spanish bingo and we have Spanish bananagrams, because it's important to be sensitive to the cultural backgrounds of the community that you're serving. And if the community is changing, then you got to change what you're doing. And so I think that's one reason why our population is growing, because we're changing with the population. And last but not least, I have on here, conduct home visits. One of the things that I also do in my building, I'm the director of the parent-teacher home visit program. And we go out to the homes, and it's voluntary. We don't just show up. They have to agree. But we show up in pairs and we see where the children are living, and the children are really excited. This is what I got for Christmas, or this is what I'm having for dinner. And a family that is at the top, that is one of the parents, and her 5 boys. And I've had each and every one of those 5 boys, except for the youngest one. He will reach the grade that I teach next year. But she's Muslim, and her boys, going to her house, and I had a couple of her boys during the pandemic, and that's really when I started visiting. It bridged the cultural gap that we had. And last year, at the end of the year, she brought in a feast for all of the teachers in my building, like a teacher appreciation dinner, and she brought us food very similar to what we just had out there. And it was amazing, and I think that it's because we've bridged that gap and she feels welcome, and all 5 of her boys are thriving there. One of them is going to the school or the district-wide math bee next month, so just a testament that when you bridge those gaps, you create those bonds with the parents, the students will thrive. And how can you figure out, is your school on the right track? How do you measure the engagement? You give the parents surveys. You hold focus groups and whatnot to find out, well, what are we doing well? What can we improve on? And those are some of the questions that I also asked during the parent-teacher home visits. What engagement activities did you like? What can we do differently? And they will tell you, well, we didn't like this, or such and such talks too much, or we didn't like the food. But asking their opinions, that really matters. Here are some of the references I use for my part. And then last but not least, Teacher of the Year updates. I had the opportunity to speak to the Macomb County NAACP at their general meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was still Women's History Month, so I talked about women and women in the teacher workforce, and more specifically, African American women in the teacher workforce. Friday, I received an award from the Torch of Wisdom Foundation. I think they have some affiliation with the Delta Sigma Thetas, and they give awards for community members who are dedicated to providing advocacy or doing good deeds in scholarship, I think cultural awareness, and I think the third one is the arts. And I received the Scholarship Hero Award, so that was very cool to do that. That was Friday. I didn't have a chance because it just happened to get that picture in there, but I think that's like the billfold that was going around. Last month was March's Reading Month, so I did get a chance to go to the Mount Clemens Public Library to participate in an initiative that they had. It was called Our Community Reads, and these are some photos that were taken. They had the Mount Clemens publication was out taking the pictures, and it was pretty cool, and they did a whole story on what it was like to grow up there. And that was one of the many places that I got to read during March's Reading Month. And there's a couple of the other readers there. They had the mayor of Mount Clemens, and then a couple of women from sorority. I don't want to say the wrong sorority or get the name wrong, so I'll just say from a sorority. And then I had the opportunity to speak at a couple of conferences in the month of March. March was super busy, but I went to the very first Michigan Educator Rising Conference, and I got to talk to aspiring educators there. And then I also went to MEA's Aspiring Educator Conference, where they had future teachers. I think the teachers there, they were a little bit older. They were graduating seniors about to enter the workforce. And that was a fun event. The theme was Summer is Hot and Unions Are Hotter, because it was by MEA. And they had all of the tropical decorations out, and I thought it was pretty funny because it was the day we had the big snowstorm a couple of weeks ago. So it was very fitting. We were all bundled up, and flip-flops were everywhere. That's it for us. Thank you. I know it's late, and you guys have been troopers, but thank you for having us, and thank you for listening. And we're open for questions.
you.
Thank you very much to both of you. We appreciate your presentation. I look forward to this presentation each and every month. The presentations by kids, the presentations of staff are what ground us here. Board members, questions or comments for our Teachers of the Year? Ms. Tilley.
I'll take a bite of the apple, as you like to say.
Go ahead.
I want to thank you ladies for the presentation. I feel like it's so underrated, the effects that the support has on students and parents, and really helping to support them achieving academically, especially in the urban areas where it's so needed. And getting those resources to the parents as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Mr. Bullock?
I was just gonna say, great presentation. Everything I do is about relationships, so I applaud you on starting early.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Other board members? Once, twice, thrice?
Just a quick question. When you go to do your home visits, do you use the evidence-based programming, or you just go in and just have the conversations with the family and the children?
So the program that we're using in DPS, it is a national program. It's called the Parent Teacher Home Visit Program. And so, you know, it is research-based, and we do have certain questions. You know, I don't go in with a clipboard, but I have the questions in the back of my mind, and then afterwards I fill out the little survey. So, you know, there's a certain amount of time. We do have to go in pairs because it's not safe to go alone. And, you know, there's certain regulations, but I found that it has greatly impacted my relationship with the students in my classroom. And like I said, the students, they remember, and it matters to them, and they get so excited. And then parents who were hesitant to do it, you know, once the student says, well, hey, Lori, did you know Miss Jackson came to my house last night? Then that student goes home, well, like, hey, well, I want Miss Jackson to come to my house. What's going on? How come she didn't visit me? So word of mouth with the students is very big.
Can I add in, I don't know if it's my place right now, but one of my students left his Croc shoes in my classroom, and I know he was going on a, you know, I don't know, something, he needed these Crocs for the weekend, so I called the parent and I said, hey, I have got so-and-so's Crocs here. Can I just run them to your house real quick because I'm on my way home? She says that he still talks about the day that I came to his home and delivered his Crocs, and he's grown up now. But even just something that simple, that home-school connection is very powerful. So thanks for including that.
It's funny you say that. I have a high school teacher from Saginaw High School that I just saw at the big Saginaw High School Arthur Hill last rival game. And I saw him and I reminded him that he came to my school the day, my home the day after graduation, because I had a book that needed to be turned in. He came to pick it up. So my math teacher, but I remember that, and it made a huge impression on me. So.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. Any other board members? I want to thank you for your presentation. It was terrific, and my contribution is to note that Crocs are religious shoes. Do you know why?
I don't.
Because they're holy.
Oh.
Appreciate you. The next item on Dad's Humor at a State Board meeting. The next item on today's agenda is the state and federal legislative update. We will now hear from Dr. Cheryl Kennedy, Legislative Liaison in the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, with the state and federal legislative update. Dr. Kennedy, welcome.
Everyone.
And then we will hear the voluminous reports of Dr. Pritchett and Dr. Robinson, followed by consideration of the charter school resolution. Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Every time I hear the Teacher of the Year reports, it makes me miss the classroom. They're so outstanding.
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep this brief because I know we have still a lot to do today. I just wanted to let you know that we do have bill numbers that you might be interested in for the House and Senate budget. So House school aid budget is 5507. The House Department of Education budget is 5506, and the House supplemental budget, if we need one, is 5503. Senate school aid budget is Senate Bill 751, and the Senate Department of Education budget is Senate Bill 769. So I know you all like to track those in the media as they're reported. We do expect to hear the House budget on April 25th. I wouldn't be surprised if the Senate budget we will also be hearing on that day, but certainly it's getting close. We expect the dyslexia House hearings to occur May 7th. As you know, the dyslexia package did already pass the Senate. So now the next step is House hearings. We're expecting that on May 7th. As you know, calendars change, but this gives us a little bit of a heads up. Today there was a hearing in Senate Transportation and Infrastructure about the use of sidearm cameras on buses to capture drivers that are driving past a bus with red flashing lights. On April 23rd, we will be providing testimony in support of Safe Home, Safe Schools package, which requires schools to distribute safe gun storage information to parents and guardians. That information is provided to us by Michigan State Police. And that is my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. That was a whirlwind tour in a very short period of time. Board members, questions? Question? We have a board that is tuckered out, Dr. Kennedy.
You did a great job. You know?
Thank you very much for your
Thank
report.
you.
Stay with us for a few minutes. We may need your expertise.
All right.
Not, you don't have to necessarily be here. You can take a chill pill with Ms. Ponte in the back, but we may need your insight. Dr. Pritchett.
We met a week ago by meeting, it's virtual. And I want to, and we're going to talk about this resolution in the next few minutes, but again, thank Mitch and Ellen for their leadership. This resolution's been in the works now for several months as it's been vetted by staff, and several people have looked at it and worked on it, et cetera. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Our next meeting is May 2nd. And I have written down, and obviously we'll be doing some research along with some help from staff, I'm sure, on these three resolutions from this morning, plus review of past resolutions as Dr. Pugh has requested. So.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Dr. Robinson?
Nothing.
Okay. That was a brief NASB report. Thank you so much for that. Charter school resolution. Dr. Robinson, would you like to move it?
Yes.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Support.
We have a second by...
Madam President.
There we go. Chivalry is not dead, by Madam President, by Dr. Pugh. Dr. Robinson, to you to read it into the record, please.
Okay. Whereas we believe that public education is a pillar of our democracy and at the center of community life. Whereas we believe in the common school is envisioned by Horace Mann as a public institution that nurtures all who live and work within its boundaries, regardless of race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, LGBTQ+ status, or learning ability. Whereas we believe that taxpayers are responsible for funding such schools, that funding must be equitable to adequately address the learning needs of the community, and that taxpayers have the right to know how these funds are being used to educate the children that these schools serve. Whereas we believe that such schools should be accountable to the public, that citizens have the right and responsibility to elect those who govern their schools, and that these schools must be governed by locally elected school boards. Whereas we have become increasingly concerned with national efforts to privatize public education, with the removal of the governance of public schools from the communities that the schools serve, and the moving of the governance to private and appointed boards, religious institutions, and nonprofit and for-profit corporations. Whereas we believe that treating our common or public schools as an educational market is in conflict with the mission and vision of public education. Whereas we believe that the large number of charter schools in Michigan, 285 districts with 363 schools, approximately 1/3 of the local education agencies in the state, schools that are not governed by elected boards and as such are not directly accountable to the citizens of their communities, is a threat to democratically governed community-based schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education calls for and supports state legislation that includes the following. 1, review by MDE for approval or denial applications of new, replicating, or expanding charter schools after consultation with the local district in which the charter will operate. 2, the transformation of for-profit charter management organizations to nonprofit charter management organizations within the state. 3, full and complete transparency in all financial matters related to revenue and expenditures for charter management companies. 4, charter schools must comply with both the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act. 5, the publication of detailed management contracts and detailed education management organization, or EMO, expenditures by function on the charter schools' websites. 6, the requirement that charter schools and their management companies follow all bidding laws and regulations. 7, the requirement that no students be excluded from attending a charter school, discouraged from enrolling in a charter school, or encouraged to disenroll based on behavior, academic achievement, disability, English language proficiency, family status, or living situation. 8, the prohibition of charter schools refusing transfer students during the school year if the charter schools have available space. And 9, strong encouragement that all charter school teaching and administrative staff increasingly hold certificates as opposed to short-term permits, and that those employees who are working while holding temporary or emergency permits are encouraged to become fully certificated.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Dr. Robinson has read it into the record. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Board members, questions or comments about the resolution? Dr. Robinson, would you like to add to that?
Just a little bit of context. So charter schools are technically public schools, so they should be expected to follow the same regulations regarding transparency as all publicly funded schools are expected to follow. That said, while the original notion of charter schools as laboratories of innovation came from teachers' unions, that purpose has now largely been lost to predatory for-profit charter management organizations, education reformers, I'm using my air quotes, and politically motivated special interest groups. I've studied the effects of the unfettered proliferation of charter schools in Michigan over the last 10+ years. I see no evidence of innovation in the charter sector, and I believe it's time for much stricter oversight and accountability measures for the existing charter schools in our state. We currently struggle to adequately fund and support one system of public schools, even as we are now funding an additional parallel system of publicly funded schools, which differ mostly from traditional public schools in that they pay teachers 30% less, administrators 30% more, and are excused from following many of the same rules and regulations as traditional public schools. This is an approach that's both financially irresponsible and educationally unsound.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I appreciate your sharing. Other board members? Mr. McMillan.
Yeah, I was president for quite a few years of Prevail Academy in Mount Clemens Charter School. I remember going to from its inception. I was there before it was even, I believe before they even had the building. I remember going to the parent meetings and seeing all those parents so thrilled that their kids were going to get a decent education as opposed to where their kids were. By zip code with the school they were assigned. I know that there are many who want to protect the parents or the adults in the system at more at first. That's their first priority as opposed to the children. They don't want parents to have choices, and these charter schools give parents choices. They fill up for a reason. Because the parents want their kids to have a decent education. I know that many just want to keep those kids locked in failing schools. I know that charter schools are fully public schools and are fully subject to all provisions of the Open Meetings Act and FOIA. They are fully transparent with spending and must report every penny they spend. All their charter school teachers and administrators are all required to be certified. And, you know, especially the first provision, suggesting that MDE or the state superintendent is going to approve or deny kids or parents a choice for their kids. You're going to try to go to the local district, and I'm sure they're not going to want it. They don't want competition. They want the money in order to pay the adults in the system. Oftentimes, very huge amount of administrators, very top-heavy. And so there's, what this would do is simply force charter schools to not open, which is, again, what some people want who put adults in the system over children. And it's a shame. I certainly think that this is a travesty, and it is meant to force kids to stay in failing schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMillan. I appreciate the sharing. Mr. Bullock.
So, I at one point had children in charter, private, and public in the city of Detroit. So I don't have an anti of anything. I'm pro-education, so, but I do understand, and working probably just growing up in Detroit, understanding the dynamics of schools closing and opening. I've seen a lot of unintended consequences of the operation of charters without any oversight, as Dr. Robinson said. So if you have a community that has a school that's struggling, and it may be struggling, but if 2 charter schools open across the street and down the street, the unintended consequence is to decimate the neighborhood, because they come out of there's gifts, enroll and get a tablet, or an iPad. And so now the kids that was basically living and operating in a school system that may go up, may have not, but the insertion without oversight of another school in that struggling neighborhood splits that neighborhood, and operating in the fashion that they do, that is how you destroy a neighborhood, at least from my community. I don't know about everybody else's community. I know that the school grid is operated by neighborhoods on a specific thought process. In Detroit, I think we got just over 100 charter schools, just over 100 public schools, and some private schools. But between the charters and the public, I believe barely or just around 5% are operating at an optimal, acceptable level, and on the charter side. So that means that it's more than just choice. It's done without a very thoughtful or strategic manner. And so there are other factors that happen, and there are unintended consequences that happen. So this isn't about public versus charter. This is about how they operate. And so I think it's detrimental to allow in any industry to allow someone to operate unfeathered while one part of the industry has to operate under a systematic process. Now, if somebody wants to suggest releasing changing how that format works, that's fine. But right now, public schools are strapped into a process that has been decided by law and education. So if we're going to use public dollars to fund charter schools, they need to operate with less autonomy, I guess would be the word. Is that a good way to say that? So I'm going to vote in favor of this, because I think the 9 bullet points address what I've observed over the last however many years of my life, and I've seen the charter schools start popping up. Some of them popped up from necessity. It was a void that needed to be filled. But now, in a different climate, they operate whether the intention of moving into a neighborhood is good, I don't think they look at the overall consequences of being in that neighborhood.
Thank you. I appreciate the sharing, Mr. Bullock. Dr. Pugh.
I will be voting in support, and I'm just, when I received the resolution, I began to review the presentation that was done at the end of 2022 when we did the FOIA of hundreds of charter schools, and remembering there was like over $1 billion that we couldn't see where those dollars went. And then looking at the line items that the traditional public schools have to provide, it was like 10 line items to a one sweep line item of this is contracted out. And again, going back to the financial challenges that we're seeing across the board in education, this is a time to look at everything, and we do need to have greater transparency as it relates to all schools, the charter schools, and those that are overseen by for-profit management companies in particular.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Appreciate those remarks. Other reflections? Ms. Lipton.
The governing charter statute in Michigan has created such really perverse incentives, and it doesn't have to be that way. In Michigan, when I was doing research on this back when I was in the legislature, it was actually intended by design to, give all of the oversight authority to the authorizers, and yet to reward authorizers for financially reward authorizers for actually being an authorizer. So the governing structure for charter schools in Michigan created really perverse incentives for certain authorizers, the high flyers, if you will, to authorize and get that sort of that financial benefit without doing a lot of oversight. There are situations in other states where there are different things that we could have done to have, I think, a more robust charter oversight statute. But when it was passed in 1992, 1993, it was really designed to look like there was going to be oversight, but I think intentionally not to have oversight. And as a result, we have some of the most lax oversight on charters, and a result of a proliferation of more for-profit charters in this state than in any other state. So we could have done it better in Michigan. We didn't, and I think that it's appropriate for this body to, given the work that we did with the FOIA, to really keep trying to do right by the kid, all of the students and children in the state.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. I just want to check out first bites before we get to second bites. First bites, either of the two of you? Very good. Mr. McMillan, to you for second bite.
Yeah, I guess the main incentive is that if the parents are happy, then they'll keep their kids there at the charter schools. The perverse incentive that I think is perverse is to not give choice and to force them based on their zip code to go to a failing school if that's what they are in, one that they think is horrible. And many would just love to let them sit and just let the kids have a failing education and not have any choices. The perverse incentive for not having charter schools, that's really perverse when you don't have choice. That's the worst. As far as authorizers go, I believe in 2014, Superintendent Flanagan was threatening to shut down authorizers. So they have that authority, apparently. So,
Is that apparent?
I mean, that, he was threatening, I don't know if he was, he never did, but I assume that state superintendents do have that, so, you can take it up with, the state superintendent if you think that there's an authorizer that's not doing well. And of course, the left loves to talk about for-profit charters, and there is no such thing. They are all public schools, charter schools, and so it's a nice little line that is completely false. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. McMillan.
Are charter schools providing a better academic opportunity?
The research on charter schools does not reflect that. There are some studies that suggest that they have lightly improved. There are others that say not. There are some people that argue that the methodology around some of those studies is flawed. I'm one of those people. If you'd like to know more, we can do a full presentation on the achievement of charter schools relative to traditional public school districts. It's a lengthy subject. We ought to have people who do this for a living come in and present to us. It would be well worth the board's time, and I might add it would be a community service to do so. Ms. Tilley.
And I would say also looking at other states as well, because Michigan has become kind of like the wild, wild west when it comes to charter schools. When you look nationally, you know, and NASB has given us presentations on this. There states that allow charter schools usually put limits on it.
Tell us what NASB is. I know, but I want the public to hear.
National Association School Boards of Educators.
Okay, there you go.
So our national
State Boards of Education. Yep.
State Boards
Yep.
of Educators.
Okay.
So our national association, basically, going to the conferences, this is, you know, a topic, and it's given to us. You know, it's not politicized. It's just giving us the data, the information. So when you look at the data and when you look at the information that's presented, you know, you can't just have thousands in most states of charter schools. It's a limit on the numbers, and we are not transparent here. So we do need to change the laws, and this has gone on for a very long time with the laws being like this. And we have had proof, and we have had data. We have had enough time for data to trend to see the effects of the charter school systems here. And not all charter schools are bad. We're not saying that, but what we are saying is it as Board Member Bullock pointed out, it has definitely affected certain communities in Michigan. And we just need transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Anyone else for the good of the group? Once, twice, thrice? I think part of your point overlapped with Ms. Lipton's point as well. The fact that we've been at this for 30 years and the structure around what is permissible for charter schools in Michigan is quite a bit looser than it is in many other states across the country. Anything else for the good of the group? Once, twice, thrice? Hearing none. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Absolutely.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh? Yes. Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder absent, and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very much for board. It is 4:50, and because you all look like you have lots of gas left in your tanks, it's comments by State Board of Education members. Ms. Tilley.
I want to thank our educators out there. Ms. Richard pointed out that our educators are overworked, and they are. And today we expect them to not only be educators and teachers, we expect them to be psychologists. And law enforcement and social workers and nurses, and they wear so many hats. And I think we don't take the time to thank you all enough. So I want to thank all of our educators out there. And then I want to give voice, because this is something that has been on my heart for a while. I want to give voice to and acknowledge the victims of gun violence and their families. We have thousands across the state, and then in urban areas, your African Americans, your Latino communities, a lot of times they get overlooked. Their cases aren't heard. The families aren't getting the support they need. It is more so normalized in those communities. The counseling that is needed is not had. So there is tremendous support, and we don't acknowledge to the degree that we need to urban PTSD. And it's something that is very real, and it is a high rate, high number, and some of those factors that play into gun violence in those communities just get ignored. And so I just want to give voice to and acknowledge those victims and those families that have been suffering and have been looking for answers for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilly. And I might add, and I'm sure you recall this, you've raised this issue over a period of time with this board, and you spearheaded one of those two resolutions associated with gun violence. You may recall the reference to Everytown, USA, the statistics that came forward. We amended that resolution substantially to get it to where we wanted to get it. So this is not a new issue for you. This is not a new issue for the state board. It's a return to this issue by the state board, and I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board members who care to share at 4:53? Mr. McMillan.
I appreciate the commitment by the majority to bring forward some resolutions next month on Oxford and some reforms that need to be done. I think the legislative committee is an open meeting, and so I would hope that parents that were here today might be invited or would be invited to share their thoughts and experiences. It sounds like what's happening to these parents is not well known, and what they've gone through, and so I think that it would be best to have them assist in crafting resolutions that will be forthcoming next month. Thank you.
To be clear, there was a recommendation to move those resolutions into the legislative committee in lieu of considering them today. That was rejected by the board member, who then left precipitously the board meeting. We will have some conversation about what we can do at the legislative committee. Those are complicated topics, and the idea somehow that those are going to be magically transformed into resolutions in one legislative committee meeting, I think we should disabuse ourselves of that notion here, and I don't want that as a presumption coming out of this meeting. So we will look at that. We will look at what we consider at that meeting, but it is a 1-hour legislative committee meeting. These are complicated resolutions, and we'll work with the offerer of the resolutions to determine which of those we bite off first and which of those we work on subsequently, assuming she retains an interest in working with the body. Any other reflections by state board members? Dr. Pritchett.
It's April, so all of the buildings in the state of Michigan and students at one way or another, at least grades 3 and above, are in some sort of standardized testing mode at this point. So just keep that in mind. Administrators, teachers, students change the schedules, et cetera, as they go through this process. So just wanted to bring that up and remind us all.
It's a good point. It has become a little bit more abbreviated over the last handful of years. It is still, in my view, overly elongated.
Yep.
And I'm not advocating against state summative assessments. I do think, though, that state summative assessments ought not to be the assessment tail that wags the instructional dog, which I think is what you were saying in less pithy fashion. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anything more for the good of the group? Going once, twice, thrice? Board, we have 3 board meetings that we should mention to our listening audience. May 14th is the next state board meeting, 9:30. May 21st is a work session, and tick-tock goes the clock. And June 11th at 9:30 is the June regular board meeting. It is 4:57. Enjoy the next 7 hours and 3 minutes of April 9th.